girls they want you about. I see them all stopping and calling of the shop. Got footsteps to the sea, they dance upon the rising sun. Thousand angels singing, Lord, it fills my soul. Louder and louder, it is strong. Faster and faster, it goes on the turn. Tighter and tighter, on the lightning flash. Closer and closer, you know you're almost so big. And the whole again. Machines make their rounds, don't care they ever see the dawn. Make it peaceful flowing river after the winter's come and gone. Yeah, I feel weak and wounded, long little second song. The lady at the wheel, holding roses and plants and thorns. Louder and louder, it ancient strong. Faster and faster, people's on the turn. Tighter and tighter, all the lightning flares. Closer and closer, you know your walls so thin. And they're whole again.
Hello, everybody. How's it going? How are you winners doing out there? Welcome to Old School Watch Party Sundays. It's me, Winning Reality, and Shelly. How's everybody today?
How's everybody doing out there? I'm good. How are you, sweetie?
I'm good. Let's say hi to the people in the front row. Suzanne, how you doing this evening? Daisy girl, thank you so much. Thank you guys for being here. Jacob Pete's my man. What's up? Cool gamer? How you doing, sir? How you doing? How's everybody doing out there? Man, we got a good show in store for you tonight. Yeah, it's gonna be some fun stuff, man. We're gonna pick right up with an addendum to last week. Hey, how you doing, Shanagram? Welcome.
Shani.
Thank you for being here in the front row with us this evening. All right. You came, not forgetting. Thank you. Come and look for us, man. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, old school in the house. This is we're gonna do two documentaries tonight. The first one's short, and then the next one's kind of one of the longer ones. We're gonna pick up kind of where we left off last night. What's up, dog mama? How you doing? I've not seen you before. Welcome. Hope you enjoyed the show. And we did Psy Wars last week. I hope everybody enjoyed that. It's very eye-opening. Memento Mori, how you doing, sir? How you doing? Grab yourself a seat in the front row. You're here with the front row crowd. And this one's gonna kind of do it. I found this one this week. Not one of the ones I used to watch back in the day. Kind of like a little bit newer one, but it did such a great job taking a deeper dive on what we talked about, what we saw last week. I just wanted to show it to you because it has some really great footage. It has some great footage of Edward Bernays and others talking about what we were talking about last week with the power of the media and how it's used to get inside of our minds. And it really does a great job kind of wrapping up the history of that in a different way that I have not seen before. So I needed to add it to this week. And it's got this kind of interesting way of doing it. The guy does everything in stereo. So if you enjoy stereo, and then we're going to dive into our feature length documentary called Lifting the Veil. And this is another one of those ones that from Scott Noble, and it's one that I happen to recommend a lot because it talks about how social movements are co-opted. And it's nice. It fits in very nicely because, in order to do stuff like that, you got to be able to control the information. And then that's when you control the information, you can drive people to do things like join social movements. And I wanted to take a second, though, to just state that these are old school documentaries. Yeah, I think you're going to like it, Shinagram. You're going to like it for sure. This is, and who these people are that make these, right? Scott Noble does a lot of work. He tends to lean center left, and so I wanted to kind of say that, with these documentaries, one, they can have shocking content to them. You can get sudden flashes of images of war or just things like that. So just be prepared. Nothing I don't think that this crowd can't handle, but just I want to I think I need to say it up front, right? That's for everybody here and all the cool people in the rewatch crew who we love. And thank you so much for coming and watching this on your own time. They're the rewatch crew. It really means a lot just that you come back and you check these out when you have a moment to do so. It's just like you're right here, right? So we're gonna I just want to put that out there for you, and also say, I play these documentaries. They're old school. My job as your host is to present the information. Our job as your hosts is to present the information, right? And then do it in an unbiased kind of way because we're analyzing these films, right? The people that appear in these films and some of the information that are in them aren't always necessarily our opinions, but I think the information in them are good enough and the concepts are good enough that we can look at them and analyze them together and get a feel for what they're like. Now, just because I don't agree with someone politically doesn't mean that they can't have some good things to say in terms of just basic information, basic ideas, and that they can't see some things the same way as we do. And these documentaries, hey, Mike O'Hagan, how you doing? So happy that you're here. And so when we watch these, I saw last week, some people got a little, some people get turned off by Chomsky. He's in this one a little bit too. I for his analysis, his media analysis stuff, he's just like everybody else. He really sees it the same way, but he doesn't. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with. I don't agree with this politics or solutions for politics, I should say. And that's all right. It's all right. I do respect him for his media analysis mind and like the way that he can analyze media, and he does it in a very honest way, I feel. So sometimes we can just like a family member or somebody else, you can disagree with them politically, but still respect their opinions on things and still respect their what they're good at, what they're really good at, and see them in that light. So even if you happen to not agree with someone politically, doesn't mean that what they're saying about this topic isn't necessarily right or wrong, right? So just putting that out there, kind of like a new opening disclaimer for the show. I realized that as I was setting up the next, I think 2 or 3 months of content for this show, that we're going to run across some things from time to time that were that are kind of cross that line or kind of be in that line. Now I do plan on kind of moving us into a different direction eventually. I want to tackle the food industry, like GMOs and pesticides and things that affect our health, as well as climate issues, right? This whole global warming, climate change. Back in these days, for the old school days, they called it global warming, right? So I do want to tackle these big topics as they start to wind up around the election season coming up, when you hear these terms being thrown around a lot. But to get started tonight, Rule from the Shadows, A Psychology of Power. This is a 37-minute documentary. And let me just say that it says that in the pursuit, this is kind of like, I'm not going to read the whole thing because this is kind of like the introduction to the documentary, but I'll tell you the first line is the pursuit for dominance is the primary propellant of history, always has been, always will. Those who don't identify this assumption are not excused in the grand chess game, but instead are displaced and exploited by forces they do not comprehend. Not like this crowd right here. This crowd knows what's going on because this is the winner's crowd right here.
Yeah,
right? That's right. So let me go ahead and get this presented. We're going to jump right in. And remember, if you have anything that you'd like to ask us, just add us in the chat. And as always, we have memberships. If you want to join the Winner's Circle, it's right down there. You can join. Love to have you. And let's get going.
Let's go.
Let's go. Do you want? I just rambled on for like minutes. Would you like to say something, Shelley?
No, I'm good. I'm excited to watch this.
All right. Yep. It's just part 1, but I don't think there was ever a part 2 to this. So let's pull it up. Boom. Okay, guys, here we go. 3, 2, 1.
The quest for power is the driving force of history. Always has been, always will be. Those who fail to recognize this principle are not spared in the grand chess game, but rather are moved and manipulated by forces they do not understand. From the perspective of those who dominate the board, it is obviously preferable to have a population of ignorant pawns than it is to have an array of opponents which are capable of mounting an effective resistance. To that end, it has always been in the interest of the ruling class to cultivate illusions which obscure the true nature of the game.
Manufacturing consent. What is that title meant to describe?
Well, the title is actually borrowed from a book by Walter Lippmann, written back around 1921, in which he described what he called the manufacture of consent as a revolution in the practice of democracy. What it amounts to is a technique of control. And he said this was useful and necessary because the common interests, the general concerns of all people, elude the public.
Walter Lippmann wasn't speaking theoretically, nor was he commenting on a phenomenon that he had observed from a distance. He was part of that specialized class, and he personally influenced the development of this new technique, control. So what was this new technique that Lippmann was referring to? The answer to that question takes us back to the beginning of World War I. In 1917, Woodrow Wilson formed the Committee on Public Information, also known as the CPI. It was a propaganda agency, and its purpose was to build support for the war with the American people.
I want to say really quick for everybody who's been watching along and been part of my Unveiling reality shows, or even the Valley of the Shadow series I did to start this channel, this is going to be a big payoff. This is going to be this little document right here is a big payoff for a lot of the terminology I've used and a lot of the examples I've given. That's another reason I forgot to say that earlier, why I wanted to bring it up. So pay close attention. You're going to get some big payoffs on that coming up shortly.
The CPI, run by a man named George Creel, was known for its crude tactics, blatant exaggerations, and outright lies. However, one member of the CPI, Edward Bernays, had a much more subtle approach. Rather than resorting to lowbrow tactics, Bernays studied the mindset of the American people, and then based on his observations, he created a campaign to promote the idea that America's purpose in the war was to, quote, make the world safe for democracy. This meme...
How many times have you guys heard that term right there? Make the world safe for democracy. You ever wonder where that came from? Now you know.
Was wildly successful. So much so that it continues to be used even to this day. Edward Bernays was Sigmund Freud's nephew, and like his uncle, he was an avid student of human psychology. Some documentarians, such as Adam Curtis in his film The Century of the Self, have mistakenly assumed that the psychological techniques that Bernays went on to develop were merely the practical application of Freud's theories. However, though Freud had a significant influence on his nephew, the reality of the matter is that he was not the source of these ideas. Sigmund Freud, Edward Bernays, and Walter Lippmann all subscribed to a school of thought that was first put forth in 1895 by a French social psychologist named Gustave Le Bon. Le Bon wrote several books, the most famous of which was entitled Psychologie des Foules. It was translated into English as The Crowd, a study of the popular mind. The Crowd was a revolutionary piece of work. In it, Le Bon not only presented an in-depth description of group psychology and how it differed from individual psychology, but he also outlined a very simple set of principles that enable leaders to spark ideological contagion and thereby rise to power. Hitler, Goebbels, and Mussolini all studied Le Bon's writings, and they applied his techniques to the letter. The results that they attained were precisely those that Le Bon claimed that they would have. Funny how they leave that little detail out of most history books, don't you think? Sigmund Freud's book, Group Psychology and the Analysis of the Ego, was in fact a direct critique of the writings of Gustave Le Bon and William McDougall, which focused on the relationship between individual psychology and group psychology, and explained how human groups can be controlled for long periods of time through the manipulation of group identity, belief systems, and social structures. Edward Bernays studied the writings of Freud, Le Bon, Wilfred Trutter, Walter Lippmann, and many others. He then combined their perspectives and synthesized them into an applied science. The success of his Make the World Safe for Democracy meme during the war, both at home and abroad, planted the seed of an idea in Bernays' mind. Could group psychology tactics be applied during peacetime?
When I came back to the United States, I decided that if you could use propaganda for war, you could certainly use it for peace. And propaganda got to be a bad word because of the Germans using it. So what I did was to try to find some other words. So we found the word Council on Public Relations.
In 1919, Bernays opened the world's first public relations office. He named his agency the Council on Public Relations.
It occurred to me that any young debutante who was aware of the times and of herself as a woman being discriminated against would be delighted to walk in the Easter parade with her bow to dramatize the idea that cigarettes were indeed torches of freedom.
You guys remember this story? Like, you don't ever see any footage of Bernays talking. Like, that's why I like this. And this is the story I told you about how they got women to start smoking, or how they made it, socially acceptable for women to smoke, and how they opened up a whole new market for people who buy cigarettes.
To validate and to invalidate the taboo against women smoking. So I called up a debutante friend of mine, asked her to get another friend and two young men whom they liked. And I also instructed them on how to give information about what they did to the newsreels, weekly newsreels, to the newspapers, to the three important press associations, the AP, the United Press, and International News Service, and to walk from 34th Street to 57th and back and forth, lighting torches of freedom to protest man's inhumanity to women by a taboo against smoking. Next morning, there wasn't a newspaper in the United States, even the New York Times had a front page story, debutantes light torches of freedom to protest man's inhumanity by a taboo against smoking, lighting cigarettes in their walk. The interesting thing to me was that within 3 days, the newspapers, without any intercession on my part, published accounts that women were smoking in Union Square in San Francisco, in Union Square in Denver, and on the Boston Commons.
Think about that, right? So how does that look to the outside world when they hear the headlines that men's inhumane treatment of women, or uncivil treatment, or how he stated it? It was all a gimmick. Now, how many times do you think we get the same treatment these days? The division between the races, the division between the sexes. As we talked about on Matters of Opinion and Gary Lamb last night, I stopped in. T3 was a featured guest that I stopped in as a participant, and we were talking about that division of the sexes, and Wally P pointed out very accurately that this is worse and more dangerous than the division of the races. So look how far back this goes, and look at how they did it. Pretty wild.
This was Bernays' specialty, engineering social trends for clients, and he was very, very good at it. Perception was now a commodity for sale of the highest bidder. Bernays aided the CIA and United Fruit Company, known today as Chiquita Brands International, in a successful campaign to topple the democratically elected Guatemalan government in 1954. He headed up the public relations campaign to garner support for the fluoridation of municipal water supplies on behalf of the aluminum mining company, Alcoa Incorporated, who was
fluoridation of water. Now we're going to cover that topic for sure coming up. Look at what it says right there. Target organs: heart, kidney, bones, central nervous system, gastrointestinal system, and teeth. Like teeth, danger, poison. That's sodium hydrochloric acid, aka fluoride. The fluoride that they put into the water still today here in America. That's why you have to filter your water with the gravity filter. Don't take it out of that sink. Don't give it to your pets out of the sink. It's a slow acting poison, and it accumulates in your system over years and years and years. So you can see that here is the beginning of this. Just wild how much you can go back and find out. I'll see. Holy moly, I'll be doing a lot of rewatching of your old videos. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just looked at your channel. It looks very awesome. And congratulations on starting your channel, and best of luck to you out there. I see that you do some shows with Shinogram, and I'll definitely come check you out for sure.
was looking for a cheap way to dispose of their industrial waste. And he even helped the company convince the American public to eat heavier breakfasts so that they would buy more bacon. What made Bernays so successful was his skill in applying 3 psychological tactics. 1.
I'm sorry, Net Zero Filter. I'm not familiar with the brand. I can look it up for you. I use Pro Pure. It's a gravity filter. It gets 99.9% of the pollutants in the water out, including any pesticides, any fluoride, any chlorine, any kind of other kind of mess that's in there. I'll tell some interesting stories about how I came to understand the water problem that we have in a future episode. I got some really interesting stories about that, and believe it or not, that was one of the big topics that got me going on my awakening and my pursuit of the truth was the water, actually. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. What'd I do? I clicked the wrong button. Well, let me fix it. There we go. All right.
Creating carefully calculated associations with the subconscious fears and desires of individuals. 2. Influencing opinion leaders and perceived authority figures in order to reach those who follow them. 3. Initiating the contagion of behaviors and ideas through social conformity. Bernays wrote several books promoting these psychological tactics, including Propaganda and Crystallizing Public Opinion. In these books, he specifically encouraged governments and corporations to use his methodology to manipulate public perception. This suggestion did not fall on deaf ears. His techniques worked so well that they were adopted by virtually every sector that sought to influence the public: media, politics, advertising, even the military. As Walter Lippmann had indicated, it was a revolution. Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister, found Bernays' approach very useful. Bernays acknowledged this fact in his 1965 autobiography entitled Biography of an Idea, where he wrote, Carl von Wiegand, foreign correspondent of the first newspapers, an old hand at interpreting Europe and just returned from Germany, was telling us about Goebbels and his propaganda plans to consolidate Nazi power. Goebbels had shown Wiegand his propaganda library, the best Wiegand had ever seen. Goebbels, said Wiegand, was using my book Crystallizing Public Opinion as a basis for his destructive campaign against the Jews of Germany. Obviously, the attack on the Jews of Germany was no emotional outburst of the Nazis, but a deliberate, planned campaign.
Trigger warning.
The events that transpired in Nazi Germany stunned the world, and they inspired several prominent psychologists to investigate how populations are convinced to commit atrocities. In the process, they inadvertently established the science behind Le Bon's and Bernays' methods. In 1951, psychologist Solomon Asch set out to study and measure the effects and causes of social conformity and its ability to alter perception. To do so, he ran a series of experiments in which he asked groups of students to participate in what he told them was a vision test. In reality, all but one of the participants in each test were actually actors, each of whom had been prepped to give specific answers at specific times. The subject...
Has anybody heard of this experiment before? I remember hearing about this experiment. Check this out.
Subjects were shown a card with a line on it, followed by another card with 3 lines on it, labeled 1, 2, and 3. They were then asked which line in the second card matched the line on the first card in length. The lines were made in such a way that the correct answer was obvious. Each member of the group was asked to give their response one at a time, and the real participant always answered last or next to last. For the first 2 trials, the actors gave the obvious correct answer. However, beginning on the 3rd trial, they would all give the same wrong answer. The goal was to ascertain how many people would conform to the perception of those around them when the group's position contradicted their own senses. The results surprised Ash. He had believed that the majority of participants would not conform and give an answer that was obviously wrong. However, results showed that 37% of people would conform to the crowd consistently, and 75% conformed at least some of the time. Ash was uncertain as to whether this conformity was limited to social compliance, or whether it was actually influencing perception on a neurological level. In 2005, neuroscientist Greg...
Real quick, that means that 98% of people eventually kind of give in, right? Some, like a small percent, well, the 37% up front, and then the rest eventually, but the 2% never did. 2% never wavered from what they knew was right. That's y'all.
Gregory Burns sought to answer this question. Burns created a variation of Ash's experiment, this time measuring brainwave activity during the test to determine at what level of the brain this conformity was taking place. The results showed very clearly that the occipital and parietal lobes were the most active when the participants were answering incorrectly. This meant that conformity was actually altering the perception of the test subjects at the neurological level. Take a moment and register what that means. Social conformity literally causes the brain to rewrite our reality.
Social conformity literally changes your brains to rewrite reality.
In 1961, Yale University psychologist Stanley Milgram conducted a series of experiments which measured the willingness of individuals to obey authority figures. In the experiment, test subjects were placed in a scenario where they were led to believe that when they flipped a switch, an electrical shock was being delivered to a person in the adjacent room. They were then ordered by a man in a white jacket claiming to be the official scientist in charge to ask the person in the next room a series of questions. If they received an incorrect response, they were to punish them by flipping the switch, thereby administering a shock.
For example, in the first line you read, blue, boy, girl, grass, hat. Now after you've read the 4 choices, the learner pushes one of the switches on the board in front of him, and the number he has selected will light up in this box, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now if he gives the correct answer, you say correct and go on to the next line. The correct answer is underlined and is also indicated in the right margin. Yeah. If he were to indicate the wrong answer, you would say wrong. Then tell him the number of volts you're going to give him. Then give him the punishment. Then read the correct word pair once, and then go on to the next line.
As the test progressed, the voltage level was steadily increased, and the screams from the next room became more and more desperate, begging to stop the test and stating multiple times that they had a heart condition.
330 volts.
Let me out of here. Let me out of here. My heart's bothering me. Let me out. Let me out of here. You have no right to hold me here. Let me out. Let me out. Let me out.
Excellent. Fast.
Let me out.
Many of the subjects expressed hesitation about continuing with the experiment upon hearing the person in the other room scream and beg for help. Those that did were informed by the scientists that they had no choice but to continue. No consequences were threatened. Yet just this assertion was usually enough to achieve compliance. Under the influence of an apparent authority figure, 50 to 65% of subjects continued administering the shocks even up to the maximum 450-volt shock. They even continued after the person in the other room had stopped screaming, which indicated that they were unconscious or dead.
Bird, car, train, plane. Go on, please. Please answer. The answer is bird, 345 volts. Blunt, knife, stick, word, arrow. Answer, please. Continue, please. The answer is arrow, 360 volts. Go on, please, with the experiment. Please continue.
The Milgram Authority experiment has been repeated numerous times over the years, using individuals from a wide range of economic and social backgrounds, and the conclusions are always consistent. The aura of authority exercises an almost irresistible force over the human mind, easily overriding core morals and ethics. Even more shocking is the fact that no legitimate authority is necessary. Appearances suffice. The invisible government that Walter Lippmann, Edward Bernays, and Woodrow Wilson had referred to was not just an abstract concept. It was a very real and concrete reality, and they were well positioned to comment on it because they directly participated in its creation. It all started as an inquiry. The inquiry, to the select few who knew, was a group of 150 men assembled by Woodrow Wilson to gather the data that they thought necessary to, quote, make the world safe for democracy after World War I was over. Among the known members of the inquiry were Walter Lippmann, Paul Warburg, better known as the father of the Federal Reserve, and Edward House, Wilson's closest advisor, the man responsible for convincing Wilson to sign the Federal Reserve Act in 1913. From 1917 to 1918, the group compiled over 2,000 documents to be used during post-war negotiations. The most famous of these was the 14 Points document, authored by Walter Lippmann, which proposed the creation of the League of Nations, the predecessor of the United Nations.
Then, to my surprise, they asked me to go over with Woodrow Wilson to the peace conference. And at the age of 26, I was in Paris for the entire time of the peace conference that was held in the suburb of Paris. And we worked to make the world safe for democracy. That was a big slogan.
After the Paris Peace Conference in 1919, a portion of the inquiry met at the Hotel Majestic with a number of British diplomats to discuss the forming of a permanent institution. This meeting eventually led to the decision to join forces with a group of high-ranking officers of banking, manufacturing, trading, and finance companies led by Elihu Root, a powerful corporate lawyer who was also a former United States Secretary of War and leading advocate of America's entry into World War I. On July 29, 1921, the merged group filed a certification of incorporation, officially forming the Council on Foreign Relations, also known as the CFR. The CFR went on to build a membership comprised of the world's most powerful business leaders, politicians, and corporations. Among the corporate members are Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Chevron, Exxon, Shell, BP Oil, General Electric, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, Bloomberg, Rothschild's North America, and DynCorp International. You can find a complete list on the CFR website.
It's good to be back at the Council on Foreign Relations. As Pete mentioned, I've been a member for a long time and was actually a director for some period of time. I never mentioned that when I was campaigning for re-election back home in Wyoming.
Thank you very much, Richard, and I am delighted to be here in these new headquarters.
Who remembers these clubs?
I have been often to, the mothership in New York City. But it's good to have an outpost of the council right here down the street from the State Department. We get a lot of advice from the council, so this will mean I won't have this far to go to be told what we should be doing and how we should think about the future.
John Foster Dulles, Secretary of State under President Eisenhower, is listed as one of the founding members of the CFR on their own website. It was Dulles that convinced Eisenhower to use the CIA to topple the democratically elected Prime Minister of Iran, Mohammad Mossadegh, in 1953. The Shah, the puppet who was installed in his place, was a brutal dictator. He enjoyed full support from the U.S. government until he was overthrown in the Islamic Revolution of 1979. Dulles was also the man behind the 1954 CIA coup in Guatemala, and remember, Bernays ran the propaganda for that operation. The tactic that Bernays chose was to convince the public that the Guatemalan government was backed by the Soviets.
Nada menos que John Foster Dulles, que era el secretario.
No less a figure than John Foster Dulles, head of the State Department, was part of the firm of lawyers acting for the United Fruit Company. His brother Alan was the head of the CIA. So it didn't take much of an effort on their part to persuade their president, a military man, Mr. Eisenhower, to give them the green light to overthrow Arbenzi's government.
Para derrocar al gobierno de Arbenz.
U.S. Secretary of State Dulles takes the rostrum to urge united action by the Americas to outlaw international communist intervention in the Western Hemisphere.
Bernays' tactic worked, even though the Soviet Union didn't even have diplomatic relations with Guatemala at the time.
Я абсолютно убежден в том, что правительство Арбенса,
the Arbenz government, which had been in power from 1950, didn't enjoy any logistical support from the Soviet Union.
поддержкой со стороны советского правительства. И даже
We didn't even have diplomatic relations.
установлено дипломатических отношений между нашими государствами.
There was no Soviet mission in Guatemala.
Советского представительства.
Once again, Bernays set a trend. And for the next 40 years, the U.S. government would use the specter of communism to justify invasions and covert operations around the globe. Another member of the CFR, George Bundy, was National Security Advisor under Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson. He was also the man responsible for encouraging the escalation of the Vietnam War, a prospect that Kennedy opposed and would not have allowed had he lived. This according to documents written by Bundy himself. President Nixon's National Security Advisor, Henry Kissinger, is also a member of the council. Kissinger was the man behind the CIA coup which overthrew the democratically elected president of Chile, Salvador Allende. The puppet they installed in Allende's place, Augusto Pinochet, was another brutal dictator who tortured and killed thousands of his own citizens. The U.S. government politely looked the other way. Carter's National Security Advisor, Zbigniew Brzezinski, is also a member of the council.
In 1972, I became director of the Trilateral Commission, an American, Japanese, West European public organization. In 1976, I directed the Foreign Policy Task Forces for Jimmy Carter. Then I became the National Security Advisor for 4 years. Then I went back to private life, although in 1988, I was co-chairman with Ben Scowcroft and Henry Kissinger of the Foreign Policy Task Force for Vice President Bush.
You mentioned something earlier that you've done that comes up right in the spot that you're sitting many times by our callers across the country. And that is a suspicion that there is a conspiracy afoot through the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations. You ran the Trilateral Commission for how long?
About 3 years, I think. Something like that, 3 years. Not only did I run it, I helped to found it and organize it with David Rockefeller.
It was Zbigniew Brzezinski who was behind the funding and arming of the Mujahideen in Pakistan and Afghanistan, a tactic designed to incite the Soviets to invade.
U.S. National Security Advisor Brzezinski flew to Pakistan to set about rallying resistance. He wanted to arm the Mujahideen without revealing America's role. On the Afghan border near the Khyber Pass, he urged the soldiers of God to redouble their efforts.
We know of their deep belief in God, and we are confident that their struggle will succeed. That land over there is yours. You'll go back to it one day because your fight will prevail and you'll have your homes, your mosques back again because your cause is right and God is on your side.
I mean, let's remember here, the people we are fighting today, we funded 20 years ago.
Ronald Reagan's National Security Advisors Richard B. Allen and Robert C. McFarlane are also members of the council, as was his Secretary of State, George Shultz. George Shultz was behind the attempted overthrow of the Sandinista government in Nicaragua. This was part of the Iran-Contra scandal. The Contras, which Reagan and Shultz were arming and training through the CIA, killed, tortured, raped, mutilated, and abducted hundreds of civilians that they suspected of sympathizing with the Sandinistas. George H.W. Bush was a director of the CFR from 1977 to 1979, and his Secretary of State, James Baker, is a current member. You might remember this clip from 2012 where Baker and Clinton joked about the plan to take out Iran.
There will also be many, many side effects, all of them adverse, from an Israeli strike. But at the end of the day, if we don't get it done the way the administration's working on it now, which I totally agree with, then we ought to take them out.
Secretary Clinton.
Well, we're working hard. We're working hard.
I said at the end of the day may be next year. It will be next year.
Kind of sounds like an inside joke, doesn't it? 1 year after this interview, the Obama administration attempted to initiate an attack on the Syrian government. This was designed to draw in Iran, which has a mutual defense agreement with Syria. Obama took an indirect route by funding and arming militants who then committed atrocities and blamed them on government forces. Sound familiar? Well, perhaps that's because Zbigniew Brzezinski was Obama's personal mentor.
Somebody who has over decades trained
some of the most prominent foreign policy specialists, not just in the Democratic Party, but has trained a number who ended up in the Republican Party as well. He is one of our most outstanding scholars, one of our most outstanding thinkers. He has proven to be an outstanding friend and somebody who I've learned an immense amount from. And for him to support me in this campaign and then be willing to come out here to Iowa is a testimony to his generosity. So if everybody could please give Dr. Brzezinski another round of applause.
Bill Clinton is also a member of the council, and his Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, is currently serving on the board of directors. Madeleine Albright was in charge of the sanctions on Iraq that were in place during the entire Clinton administration.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
Colin Powell, who led the charge to war with Iraq by presenting false evidence to the UN in 2003, is also currently on the CFR board of directors.
Indeed, the facts and Iraq's behavior show that Saddam Hussein and his regime are concealing their efforts to produce more weapons of mass destruction. My colleagues, every statement I make today is backed up by sources, solid sources. These are not assertions. What we're giving you are facts and conclusions based on solid intelligence.
You guys starting to see how this works? I'm sure a lot of you know this already, but when we look at it through the veils of perception, right? We talk about unveiling reality, and again, this show is an addendum to unveiling reality. We know that this is the cycle of control, which again, as we see through their own actions, is perpetuating the cycle of abuse, not just on us, but on the entire world. We also see how the neocons are influenced, as well as Democrats, to form the establishment, the false left paradigm of this time, right? And how they work together to further the cycle of abuse in order to maintain their cycle of control. This is, very eye-opening stuff, and it's how we can put this together to see exactly what's going on in our world without delving into the world of, mindless conspiracies, but on factual conspiracies, right? Not theories, but actual facts. And you can see the players in the game and where they came from and how they came in. This is, again, a very revealing documentary that is giving us the history of all this and how it came about through the ability to control minds. Yep.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere. Nope, no weapons over there.
George W. Bush's National Security Advisor, Stephen Hadley, his Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice, and his Treasury Secretary, Henry Paulson, are all current members of the CFR. Henry Paulson, former CEO of Goldman Sachs, was the man behind the banker bailouts in 2008. Goldman Sachs, which just happens to be a corporate member of the CFR, was one of the primary beneficiaries of that bailout. Another CFR member, Robert Gates, was Secretary of Defense under both Bush and Obama. Obama's first National Security Advisor, James L. Jones, is a CFR member, as is Obama's second National Security Advisor, Tom Dillon, his third National Security Advisor, Susan Rice, his second Secretary of Defense, Chuck Hagel, his first Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, as was his first Secretary of Homeland Security, Janet Napolitano. John Kerry, Obama's second Secretary of State, acknowledged that he was a member of the CFR in a speech given at the Council in 2003, but he's no longer listed on the official roster. In the Senate, Dianne Feinstein is listed as a member, as is John McCain, Joe Lieberman, and former Senator Christopher Dodd. Christopher Dodd is currently the president of the Motion Picture Association of America. In that role, he was the driving force behind the SOPA and PIPA internet bills.
Controlling information, the highest levels.
3 out of 6 of the current board members of the Federal Reserve, Daniel Tarullo, Jerome Powell, and Janet Yellen, are all publicly listed as members of the council.
Finances.
This cozy relationship between the Federal Reserve and the CFR goes back to the very beginning. Paul Warburg was a founder of both organizations, and he held positions in both of them concurrently. He was a director of the council from its creation in 1921 until his death in 1932, and he served on the Federal Reserve Board from 1921 to 1926. His son, James Warburg, who is also a CFR member, is most famous for the statement he made before the U.S. Senate Committee on Foreign Relations on February 17, 1950, in which he said, "We shall have world government whether we like it or not. The only question is whether world government will be achieved by consent or by conquest." Carroll Quigley was
So you see, Paul Warburg, I wanted to just make a quick statement about him. You know, we hear a lot about Rockefeller. We hear a lot about Rothschilds. We hear a lot about some of the Soros these days. And then we hear a lot about this global ownership class, right? These wealthy elitists that are part of that cycle of control, right? But Warburg kind of slides under the radar a lot of times. And I tend to maybe suspect that he was more at the top of the pyramid than a lot of people realize. You see some of his works, and from the Federal Reserve to the CFR to many others in his lineage, continuing the process. So you know, as we speak about these rulers of the world, Warburg certainly had a huge role in this.
an author and professor of history at Georgetown University. He was also a personal mentor to President Bill Clinton.
And then, as a student at Georgetown, I heard that call clarified by a professor named Carroll Quigley.
Quigley served as a consultant to the U.S. Department of Defense, the U.S. Navy, and the House Select Committee on Astronomics and Space Exploration. He was not a fringe lunatic by any stretch of the imagination, but was in fact a respected member of the establishment. That's what makes the statements he made in his book Tragedy and Hope so significant. Tragedy and Hope was a dense and highly detailed historical volume which covered world history from 1914, with an emphasis on analyzing the driving forces of civilization. The book was completely uncontroversial. That is, until you get to the middle, where he makes the following statement. There does exist and has existed for a generation an international Anglophile network which operates to some extent in the way that the radical right believes that the Communist Act. In fact, this network, which we may identify as the roundtable groups, has no aversion to cooperating with the communists or any other groups, and frequently does so. I know of the operations of this network because I have studied it for 20 years, and I was permitted for 2 years in the early 1960s to examine its papers and secret records. I have no aversion to it or to most of its aims, and have for much of my life been close to it and to many of its instruments. I have objected both in the past and recently to a few of its policies, but in general my chief difference of opinion is that it wishes to remain unknown, and I believe its role in history is significant enough to be known. Quigley specifically identified the CFR and the Institute of International Affairs as key hubs in this roundtable network, and he confirmed its close relationship to banking and finance. The Institute of International Affairs, also known as the Chatham House, is a sister organization of the CFR. It was created in 1920 by the British diplomats who attended the meeting at the Hotel Majestic in Paris in 1919. There are chapters of the Institute of International Affairs in Australia, Belgium, France, Italy, Portugal, Norway, Poland, Finland, Hungary, Sweden, New Zealand, South Africa, Nigeria, Pakistan, Singapore, Japan, and in other countries as well.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed.
The secret to the power that the Council on Foreign Relations and the other roundtable groups wield lies in a clever application of the techniques that Bernays developed. They target individual psychology by cultivating a sense of exclusivity and prestige, which plays upon people's desire to feel important and powerful. Like Bernays, they manipulate the public indirectly by targeting opinion leaders and authority figures. By influencing their membership, which is comprised of men and women in the highest levels of government, business, and finance, they hijack the phenomenon observed in the Milgram Authority experiments while bypassing the electoral process. Most of the meetings held at the CFR are run under Chatham House rules, meaning that the ideas discussed there may be used and spread by those present, but no one is allowed to mention where those ideas came from.
I would like to remind the audience, it says here, that this meeting is not for attribution. This means that participants are welcome to make use of the information received at the meeting, but neither the identity of the speakers nor that of any other participant may be revealed, nor may one cite a council meeting as the source of the information.
These closed-door discussions and their exclusive membership process work together to engineer the phenomenon demonstrated in the Ash conformity experiments. New members must be nominated by an existing member, seconded by 3 members, and approved by the board of directors. This process ensures that ideological continuity is maintained as social conformity brings new members into line with the group. It's important to remember that wealth, social status, and official positions of power do not reduce the effects of group psychology.
We get a lot of advice from the council, so this will mean I won't have this far to go to be told what we should be doing and how we should think about the future.
To put it in simple terms, the politicians aren't the ones calling the shots. They're just puppets. Voting the bums out doesn't work. It hasn't for a long, long time. Now you know why. Even if we remove every single corrupt oligarch from the councils of government, we will end up right back in the same situation unless we deal with the psychological underpinnings of our enslavement. But how do we do that?
In other words, removing the enablement of the cycle of abuse. This is another way of looking at it, right? It's a way that we can kind of formulate it in a realistic way that we can actually be part of the solution and form a solution culture. What's up, Jacob Castro? How you doing, man? Happy to see you here, sir. Man, this is a good one. Make sure you got you go back and watch the beginning of this documentary. I think you'll really dig it if you haven't already. Yeah, this one is great, and this guy really does a great job spelling it out. So we're almost through this. We're gonna go ahead and watch to the end, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. Get your questions ready, and here we go.
How do we reach the group mind and shake the crowd from its slumber? Group psychology is a weapon, and like all weapons, it is capable of being used for good or for evil. For many years, it has been in the wrong hands. It has been hidden from the public and used against them. It's time for the people to pick up that weapon and use it to free themselves. It's time to start studying. Read Gustave Le Bon's books, The Crowd and the Psychology of Revolution. Read Edward Bernays' books, Propaganda and Crystallizing Public Opinion. And read Gene Sharp's books, From Dictatorship to Democracy and National Security Through Civilian-Based Defense. Learn the theory, learn the techniques, and start using them to spread the truth rather than hiding it. Start using them to prevent wars rather than start them. Start using them to stop the militarization of the police and to end the surveillance state. Use them to bring this corporate mafia to its knees. Some of you may find this proposition frightening. This is dangerous stuff. These are ideological M16s with boxes of ammunition. If even a few motivated individuals started using these techniques effectively, it could seriously disrupt the balance of power. But that is exactly what's needed. I challenge you to look around. Look at the state of the world. Look at where these psychopaths are taking us. If you do not feel the imperative to change the course that we are on, then you're not paying attention.
So that's because I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around. We aren't going to let any injunction turn us around.
If you feel as strongly as we do that the public needs to see this information, then make a commitment to get this film into the hands of as many people as possible. Share it through social media, post it on your website, send it to your friends via email, or pass it out on the street. You have permission to download this video and distribute it and display it in any non-commercial way. If you want to make sure you catch future videos, be sure to subscribe to Storm Clouds Gathering on YouTube, and click the little gear on the subscribe button to have YouTube send you an email notification of new uploads. Also sign up for email updates on our website, stormcloudsgathering.com, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. Special thanks to everyone who donated on our website over the past year to make this film possible. We really sincerely appreciate your support.
All right. Wow. That is an amazing documentary. Oh, hold on. Yeah. That's an amazing documentary, isn't it? Probably. Hey, I think someone's asleep. The amazing documentary with a lot to digest there, but done in a very succinct way, right? It was it's probably one of the best ones I've seen put together with all that information at one time. I gotta say, I've seen a lot of them, and that is some amazing stuff. The history lesson involved in it, the calling out, the precision of it, and the cadence of it, really sends the message in a very clear way about what's going on. And without, you take some of the stuff out of there that people will throw in there and kind of take it left or take it against, down a rabbit hole that you don't need to go into to understand really what's going on. It's the psychology, it's the players, it's the agenda, right? It's all right there. Love you too, but you always piss me off with these because they are so in your face. It's like, how can people just not see it? Well, Iris, it's like that. It's the psychology of it, and I understand, and I feel the same way. I've been awake to this information for a very long time. So, I've been walking this path alone for a long time as well. And then you find a small groups of people who see it and get it, but do they get the whole picture, or are they looking for, reptilians behind every rock, or something, some other outside source to explain it without just looking at the common sense? So what I want to do right now, real quick, and I know we have some new people here, so I'm going to pull this up. This is our retrospective, and let me share this and let me move it so I can see it over here. All right, this is our retrospective, and coming up. All right, and this is how we look at it here on the channel. Is we have these groups, and we have these grouped into veils, right? So you're born into the first veil, right? And that's the establishment narrative that most people will live under and believe most of their life. And I think we're really starting to cover some of these. I need to highlight them and say that we've covered these, but we're starting to understand these. But once people start to lose, see through the establishment narrative, we say they're waking up, right? And so they start to see, not have any faith in these systems here. I think we could actually check some of these guys off here too. And they start to look for information outside of the second veil. And that's where you fall into the second veil. Now, a lot of people think once they reach the second veil, well, they've got it, right? So all this information must be real because it contradicts, or it disputes this information. Well, what the truth is that there's a little bit of truth sprinkled into all of this stuff, but this takes you into one rabbit hole and this takes you into another. So we have to see through these type of divisive mechanisms, right, that keep us divided. This manufactured division right here that demoralizes and destabilizes, right? Keep us from coming to rational conclusions and to having conversations where we can actually point out what's going on. The hidden veils, the really hidden veils for most people are the third and the fourth veils, right? Now, a lot of people understand that there's a global elite that are running things in some way, shape, or form, right? And a lot of people understand this concept of a world government, but they think of it as a total takeover in some kind of dystopic future, rather than seeing it as a control over money, over power, military, a control of force here, psychology, right? And pharmaceuticals, drugs, things that keep us in the state, monetary control, market control, these think tanks, and these like we're talking about with the CFR and these councils that operate in secret, Bilderbergs and Davoses and so on, right? And how this actually goes into the funding of the abuse system, right? These abuse systems that then create this destabilization, to create broken people and distrusting people and division and so on, and fund these mechanisms here that are sources of information-based mind control, right here. And then if we look over here, we see this is trauma-based mind control and the third veil, the cycle of abuse. And this is why it's so important. I keep harping on what the cycle of abuse is, because it is warfare, right? It is mind control. It is done by this group right here. It is terrorism. It is war, right? We're covering all this right now. And that group that controls these things is this military industrial complex, this global banking cartel. So when we understand that they use these mechanisms and these institutions in order to harm us with abuse. Mind control is abuse, right? Lying, gaslighting, manipulation. These are forms of abuse. People tend to think of abuse as physical. It's mental too. And in this day and age, this where we are right now, we're really beginning to understand this. Things like the exposure of the Me Too movement by Johnny Depp and so on and so forth. We're starting to see these psychological problems and this epidemic on display, narcissism, and these psychological issues that are derived from this cycle of abuse, right? These ongoing cycle of abuse. All these things add to it, destroying people's lives from the very beginning, subverting the young to change the culture. I should say change and control the culture, right? To the living in fear, so that we're always on defense and never making any moves offensively to do something more about it. When we exist in the first and the second veil, we tend to ignore the root cause issues. And that's what this channel is about, understanding the root cause issues so that we can provide root cause solutions here in the fifth veil. And that's us, solution culture, right? And this is where we start to understand what's in front of us so that we can pull these veils down, right? Through solutions that we come up with that remove the enablement of the cycle of abuse, thus taking power away from the global ownership class and the mechanisms of control that they have funded and institutionalized in our world. So I hope you guys understand that. I'm willing to answer any questions about that, but I want to point that out because we just covered a whole bunch of that right there in that one little 37-minute documentary. Very insightful, very powerful. And if you like this information, please give me a like, give me a share, tell your friends about this channel, and share this video out so that people can see this information for themselves, because this is eye-opening stuff. And that's why we do old school watch party Sundays, because these are foundational documentaries from back in the day when the first wave of people waking up were born and pulling the veils down themselves, for lack of a better way to explain it right now. But all right, so we'll pull this down and we will get on to our next documentary. And that will be Lifting the Veil. Like I said earlier, this is going to be a, it's going to be a documentary that has a lot of good information about it. It's about social movements and how they all end up on the left. The left is the graveyard for social movements. And we know what social movements are like, right? We've seen a lot of them. You saw some of them on the board there. This is going to knock some of those off the board a little bit. But I'll read you to the introduction to this. This is from 2011, by the way, 2011. And it goes like this. This film explores the historical role of the Democratic Party as the graveyard of social movements, the massive influence of corporate finance in elections, the absurd disparities of wealth in the United States, the continuity and escalation of neocon policies under Obama, the insufferance of mere voting as a path to reform, and differing conceptions of democracy itself. Lifting the Veil is the long overdue film that powerfully defines and finally exposes the deadly 21st century hypocrisy of the United States internal and external policies, even as it emboldens the viewer with a sense of urgency and an actualized hope to bring about real systematic change while there is yet still time for humanity and this planet. Noble is a brilliantly pioneering the new filmmaking, incisive analysis and compelling sound and footage, fearless and independent reporting, and the aggregation of the best information out there into powerful, educational, and free online feature films. So that's just a little bit about the documentary maker. I'm looking at you, crowd. How's it going? I'm going to pull this up here now. Let me get this lined up. Make sure we said all good. Okay. All right. Sounds up. And let me pull this over here. This is a good one, man. I really enjoyed this one. I shared this one out a lot back in the day. I think it's very eye-opening in terms of that. Of course, there is a little bit of political steering in it, but we have open minds here, and we have wise eyes that we can see what good information is in this. And I'll be sure to stop and point things out as they go along. However, I think it really does do a great job and bringing a lot of important issues and information to light. Anybody out there in the crowd, what do you guys think so far? What do you guys think of that first documentary? Just give me a little heads up if you like that. Give me a thumbs up in the chat or a couple comments. And yeah, I know that it's very eye-opening and it does hit you right in the face, doesn't it, Iris? Iris, did I say Iris or Iris? You tell me how to say that. Yeah, it really does, and that's why they're so powerful, man. They really are, and that's why back in the day I was posting these links everywhere. I was like, look, check this one out, check this one out, check this one out. I'd find out what people were talking about and see what applied. And I'd be able to tell where they were, how close they were to maybe taking that step into the beyond the establishment narrative, right? To waking up. And as time went on, I realized that, there's a second awakening, and that's getting past the second veil, right? So that's kind of how my board is built out, and that's how my mind works. And as you're here with me on Sundays, you're starting to learn exactly where I come from and where I've gotten this stuff from over the years and how I've compiled this information into what is now I'm calling solution culture here on Winning Reality, and why it's important that we are winning reality together, right? Because they're controlling reality, and every day is a fight for reality. That's the whole concept behind the channel and this big idea called Winning Reality. And to thank you guys so much for being here and being part of it and helping the channel grow. You guys are awesome. I love you to death. And anyways, thank you so much for the comments in the chat. Let's see, more people used to be rebels. Now it's just trust the science, trust the narrative. How people are so eager to sit on their asses at the government's demand. Yeah. That's why it's important that we redo it. And I remember at the turn of like 2012, there was a lot of big movements out there that people were trying to get woken up. But what they've done is they've corralled the information. They've used technology, and they've used laws, and they've used the same mind control techniques, the same subversion to try to stifle the growth of this awakening. That's why it's important that people like us gather and have conversations, and that we spread the information, and that we rebirth this idea of waking up and knowing the facts and the truth about the world, right? To get past the fake news. That's right, nerd. Past the fake news. 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000%. Yes. Yep. Oh, it's Iris. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to make sure I get it right. It's respect. A silent majority gets less silent, start getting loud. So, yes, definitely. We do, and as people are kind of lulled into this, entertainment world, or, this weird world of working against other people, through very, very toxic means. We have to overcome them. They're always going to be out there trying to get in the way of progress and get in the way of this awakening. And in a lot of cases, they can't help it. They're just damaged from the cycle of abuse. Doesn't mean that we have to tolerate it, but we can understand it better to give ourselves the power to move forward and to know that we're not alone out there with this information, that there are people like us there and out there. Like I said, I walked this path alone for a very long time, and it's hard when you're part of the early waking up class, because there wasn't as many people there. Now I feel like there's more people out there. There's more awareness information that for people to get on board, and that'll shock them away. Now they can come find these old school documentaries and see and get a really, really fast roadmap to that awakening. Let's see. I walked this lonely road. Yeah, right. It's kind of like that. It's weird when you feel everybody else isn't paying attention to it, and all of a sudden you realize this other thing out there that is controlling the world, and then they don't want to listen to you about it. They don't want to hear it because everything's going good for them, or at least it's okay, or they don't want to change, or they don't want to get involved. That's the thing. And I really appreciate everybody being here to be part of this, because we're learning this together, and we're forming our own new awakening as it may be. So you guys, let's get this started, and we'll be on our way. Facts here is facts, definitely. But get excited, man. It's ebb and flow, ebb and flow. Our time is coming again.
Look historically at what happens with social change movements in the United States. They do become politically co-opted, and usually they become co-opted by the Democratic Party because the Republican Party has historically been the pro-business party. Democratic administrations tend to run on agendas of change. But once these politicians are elected to office, they tend to be, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, responsive to the interests that got them there, whether they're Barack Obama or Democratic or Republican legislators. So I think there's a very strong and easily explained tendency in the American governmental system for the Democratic Party in particular to be the big co-opter.
Well, basically, we have, the U.S. ruling class has a wonderful ideal system for itself. They have two corporate parties. One is the Republican Party that is most brazen about defending corporate interests. The other one is the Democratic Party, which has the same corporate backers, or oftentimes the same corporate backers, and sometimes different corporate backers than the Republicans. But when Plan A isn't working out, they just usher in Plan B.
False left-right paradigm. That's changed since this was made. It's 2011 again. 2011. Yep, WWE, faces and the heels.
So in terms of social movements, what this means is that the Democrats have managed to absorb social movements historically. They're the lesser of two evils. I mean, that's the basis on which they function as, they're slightly better than the other corporate party.
The fact is that the lesser of the so-called, so-called lesser of the evil is still evil. That's like saying, would you like to die by hanging or by execution? Our response should be, I choose not to die at all. The word liberal, as far as I'm concerned, is like Brother Malcolm said, you had your foxes and your wolves. And the liberals are the foxes. And in this case, the so-called conservatives or Republicans are the wolves.
So you see, 2011, guys, I want to keep harping on that. 2012 was the election. This is when the Ron Paul revolution was in full swing right here, right? And that's why the terminology of the false left-right paradigm was a term that and an idea that we were constantly talking about, and Ron Paul was constantly pointing out. Him as a candidate pointed it out, blaringly well, as far as this guy here, a truthful man who's not owned by the corporation, who's not owned by lobbyists, not owned by the money or the establishment. It started to expose this game. So as they're talking about it, keep in mind the Ron Paul revolution is going on at the same time, and we're all working to expose this. This was why I put this video out so much during that time, because I wanted people to see that what you think, what you were born into, what we were all born into, is an illusion of choice, right? That's why this is so important. And they do a great job pointing it out. And as I rewatch it with you, I'm starting to remember the feelings are coming back. I'm starting to remember why, what I was thinking at the time and why it was so important.
They both want to devour you. They both want to devour you, to eat you, to disenfranchise you. That's what it's all about.
So beginning with the populists in the 1890s, which was began as a multiracial movement in the 1890s, became absorbed into the Democratic Party, which was a segregationist party. So it destroyed the populist movement. In the 1930s, the union movement became completely absorbed into the Democratic Party. And what that meant is that, great, when Roosevelt wants to grant reforms, it helps workers. When Roosevelt decides to turn on the working class, it hurts the workers' movement and leaves the workers' movement politically powerless to fight back against it because they're loyal to Roosevelt. So that's historically the role that the Democratic Party has played, and unfortunately continues to play at this point.
Well, the Obama phenomenon represents
incredible desire among the majority of people in the United States and really worldwide, because Obama inspired governments and peoples all over the world. So it represents the pent up frustrations with the last 30, 40 years, with the neoliberal counter-revolution and the deep-seated sentiment and desire for change, for fundamental change, social, economic, political, cultural change. And so there was a groundswell in support of Obama representing those sentiments and those desires for change. And ruling groups, the bigwigs within the Democratic Party, on Wall Street and the big financial institutions and transnational corporations, the wealthy, said, whoa, we can't deal with a groundswell from below. We need to we need to control the groundswell from below.
Tonight, an extraordinary conversation with three foreign policy giants. Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, former National Security Advisor Brent Scowcroft, and former National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski. I interviewed them in New York yesterday evening at an event organized by the Center for Strategic and International Studies. The conversation took place at the Rainbow Room, high above Rockefeller Center here in New York.
The political awakening that is happening worldwide is a major challenge for America, because it means that the world is much more restless, it's stirring, it has aspirations which are not easily satisfied. And if America is to lead, it has to relate itself somehow to these new, lively, intense political aspirations, which make our age so different from even the recent past.
But he can give a new impetus to American foreign policy, partly because the reception of him is so extraordinary around the world. I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. It isn't just a crisis.
Sorry. Yep. I sure did. What I'm trying to say is that when they mention the New World Order, you always see politicians or people like Kissinger mentioning it in the economic sense. So they're talking about an economic world order or a structure, a system of management, right? People tend to take that and they kind of go a little bit further with it in the second veil and think that it's this rollout of this one world government in a sense that you're going to have this one person running the entire world, right? And that kind of ties in, as we've kind of covered a little bit on Unveiling Reality, it ties into that kind of religious kind of conspiracy realm that kind of like imagines it as the coming of an antichrist and this one world government where, you know, this religious battle will take place. And people take that and they run with it and they form new ideas about it because they don't have the information to fill it in. Like AI fills in the gaps where it's not sure things are supposed to go and makes things up for it. You know, that's kind of like what happens here. When you don't have the information, your mind will do the same thing AI does and fill in the gaps. So when you have to really be realistic about what it is, it's an economic order, and it's a system of management for that economic order. The faces of government and the structures of government will generally stay the same throughout. And, you know, like I said, we thought a lot of things were coming down the road, like the North American Union, which hasn't really ever taken place. If anything, it's more like treaties, like the European Union, right? It's a system of control that doesn't erase the borders, at least not at this point. So, you know, we may be thinking generationally that this could happen. I don't think that if we can resist it, and if tides turn, if enough people wake up, we won't see those kind of things happen. But the order will be the same. Like this new world order, the way that it's run, the economic systems and so on, they will be laid out by these groups as the system of control that funds a system of abuse. You guys see how this works a little bit now? I hope I'm explaining it good tonight. But that's what I'm trying to get through to you guys. When you see this and other people mention it, sometimes they jump the shark a little bit on the terminology. I used to do it too. So I mean, don't get me wrong. I had to go through believing that to understand that it meant something more, right? And I was missing the point because I was listening to people who were filling in the gaps for me, right? So when I went back and analyzed it again and said, okay, I'm going to reanalyze this belief system, and I'm going to revet the information, I realized with a more sophisticated mind that it wasn't what I really thought it was. So when you're waiting for this big rollout of this one world leader and one world of this and one world of that, you're going to be waiting a very long time, if not, until your dying days, because that's not what they need to continue the cycle of control and the cycle of abuse that enables their cycle of control. Right? That's why we have Unveiling Reality in that board I just showed you, because it explains all that as we go through it. So you guys hopefully I'm explaining this well, and you guys are getting a good picture of it. I know a lot of you may know this or have ideas about it. I just happen to have been doing this a long time, and I've just developed a structure for understanding it. The problem is that younger generations have been brainwashed at school levels. They really have no interest in understanding. By the time they give a shit, it's going to be too late. Exactly, Iris. You see it too. Yes, that's where we have to focus our energy. It's a generational war, right? It's a generational war that we were all born into. And we have to then we have to remove the enablement for that generational war by countering it with things like the Thomas Sowell history that we talk about on Repairing History Together on Thursday nights with Gary Lamb and myself, right? By putting the philosophy of liberty back in schools, by putting the trivium back in schools, so that we have the antivirus to know a fallacy when we hear one, and we don't use false logic to make decisions, emotional decisions, and so on, right? So that their mechanisms are not effective, and at the youngest levels. Can you imagine teaching a whole generation these healthy subjects, right? These healthy topics that grow their mind into a resistance to this cycle of abuse. Yeah, exactly. You see it too. So happy you're here. You're adding so much tonight, and everybody is adding so much tonight. And I really appreciate all the participation, because this is how we get it done. This is how we get it done. All right.
And there he is, President-elect Barack Obama.
It's the answer told by lines that stretched around schools and churches in numbers this nation has never seen, by people who waited 3 hours and 4 hours, many for the first time in their lives, because they believed that this time must be different, that their voices could be that difference.
I will promise you this, that if we have not gotten our troops out by the time I am president, it is the first thing I will do. I will get our troops home. We will bring an end to this war. You can take that to the bank.
When I promise that we are going to bring this war in Iraq to a close in 2009, I want the American people to understand that I opposed this war in 2002, 2003, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So you can have confidence that I
but not
will
8, 9, 10, 11, or 12.
ending this war.
Iran, they spend 1/100th of what we spend on the military. Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, these countries are tiny compared to the Soviet Union. They don't pose a serious threat to us.
I think it's time for us to end the embargo on Cuba. And I think that we have to end it because if you think about what's happening internationally,
Ibris will come back around. Just keep doing it.
Our biggest foreign policy challenge, and it feeds directly into the battle on terrorism, and it feeds into issues of trade and our economy, is how do we make sure that other countries in developing nations are providing sustenance for their people, human rights for their people, a basic structure of government for their people that is stable and secure so that they can be partners in a brighter future for the entire planet.
Close down Guantanamo, restore habeas corpus, say no to renditions, no to wireless wiretaps. I have said repeatedly that I intend to close Guantanamo, and I will follow through on that. I've said repeatedly that America doesn't torture, and I'm going to make sure that we don't torture. Those are part and parcel of an effort to regain America's moral stature in the world.
And as president, I'm going to make it impossible for congressmen or lobbyists to slip pork barrel projects or corporate welfare into laws when no one's looking, because when I'm president, meetings where laws are written will be more open to the public, no more secrecy. That's a commitment I make to you as president.
Lies. Everybody's buying
When
it.
there's a tax bill being debated in Congress, you will know the names of the corporations that would benefit and how much money they would get. And we will put every corporate tax break and every pork barrel project online for every American to see. You will know who asked for them, and you can decide whether your representative is actually representing you.
Such a total god. It's a ball-faced liar.
And the fuel-efficient cars of tomorrow. Jobs that will help us end our dependence on foreign oil and save the planet. Rebuilding our crumbling roads and schools and bridges, great broadband and rural areas for everybody, so the businesses can walk in those rural communities. Setting up a new electricity grid so we can get renewable energy population centers here in Indiana and across America.
Never happened.
American infrastructure to the 21st century. Tired, worn out old theory that says we should give more to billionaires and big corporations and hope that prosperity trickles down on everybody else. The last thing we can afford is 4 more years where no one in Washington is watching anyone on Wall Street, because politicians and lobbyists killed common sense regulations.
Said the guy who is
Those are the theories
funded
that
by
got us
Goldman
into this
Sachs.
mess. They haven't worked, and it is time for change, and that's why I'm running for president of the United States of America.
He changed things all right.
Bailout
Not for
Wall
the
Street
better.
banks. As president, I will ensure the financial rescue plan helps stop foreclosures and protects your money instead of enriching CEOs. And I'll put in place the common sense regulations that I've been calling for throughout this campaign so that Wall Street can never cause a crisis like this again. That's the change we need. It's been a long time coming, but tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America. It is absolutely true that NAFTA was a mistake.
A senior member of the Obama campaign called the Canadian government within the last month to say that when Senator Obama talks about opting out of the free trade deal, the Canadian government shouldn't worry. The operative said it's just campaign rhetoric and don't take it seriously.
Campaign officials called the U.S. ambassador to Canada and say, don't worry, it's just campaign rhetoric about NAFTA.
The Canadian government put out a statement indicating that this was just not true. So I don't know who the sources. It wasn't true.
It was Trump that got rid of NAFTA.
Sources at the highest level of the
Not
Canadian
Obama.
government who first confirmed that a call was made, late this afternoon, reconfirmed that a call was made.
how in the world are we going to speak about democracy when a tiny portion of society controls the financial and the material resources of society? How can you have a democratic system? For instance, the United States is the best example. If 1 or 2 or 3% of the population has the vast majority of wealth in society, how can you have a democracy? Because economic power is translated into political influence. That's been a lesson throughout history. So in the United States, the mechanism is that the wealthy and the powerful are able to finance electoral campaigns. If you want to be a viable candidate in any major election in the United States, you need vast resources. You need millions and millions of dollars. The last elections, how many hundreds of millions of dollars were spent by each candidate in the last presidential elections. And unless you're independently wealthy, like Ross Perot, and you have your own hundreds of millions of dollars to invest, you need to turn to those in society that can supply these resources. You need to turn to the wealthy and the powerful. And that means that you subordinate your program to the needs of the wealthy and the powerful. That's the particular mechanism in the United States. Wherever we look in the world, we see that economic power translates into political influence.
In order to have a proper appreciation of the American economic system, we must know how the national income is divided in America. In other words, we must examine the distribution of the great wealth produced through the operation of American capitalism.
Each person represents 1% of American households. Each dollar represents 1% of America's privately owned wealth. The top 10% of American households own 72% of the wealth. The bottom 90% only owns 28% of the wealth. If we just look at the top 1%, they own 37% of the wealth. The top 1% owns more than the bottom 90%. The top 1% owns more than the bottom 90%.
What they are leaving out right there is that when you divide that 1%, right, you have a fall off between what is immediate wealth or rich, right, higher income, and you have generational wealth at the very, very top. And that's the global ownership class I talk about, right? The one really running the cycle of control. So the Occupy Wall Street and other groups that came out during this time, they were focusing on that 1%, not realizing that there was a even smaller percentile where they should have been focusing, right? So they include more people than they should in that. A lot of people have talked about this since, but it was kind of a little bit of a miss there. Although they were on the target, they were not exactly over the target.
The plutocracy, those very wealthy people, it's about 0.04, one fraction of 1%. It's less than 1%. When you hear, the top 1% owns 40%, it's less than 1%. It's about 145,000 individuals. They make up this super rich class. Gore Vidal was telling us that when Ronald Reagan went rushing over to the Bohemian Grove and said, I want to crack at the presidency now. I'm governor of California. It's my time. They said, no, Ronnie, you got to wait. It's 1972, that's going to be tricky, Dick. Richard Nixon. He stepped back. He wasn't going to take on the power of the wealth. He's serving that power.
Mr. Reagan is for freedom, and he is for the people.
When people talk about the rich in this country, they really don't seem to have any idea how rich the rich really are. The very top is that fraction I just said of 1%. That's where it goes off the charts. The analogy is that if we could represent our income and wealth by playing blocks, children's playing blocks, each block represents $1,000. Most of us would have a pile that would go up maybe anywhere from 6 to 10 or 15 feet at most. But for that top super rich, this is Heilbronner's analogy, the piles of blocks would go up many times over the Eiffel Tower, many times higher than the Eiffel Tower. It would go out of sight.
Concentrations of wealth and power are fundamentally anti-democratic. That whenever you've got a monarchy or a giant corporation like the East India Company, you have a force within society that's going to dominate and dictate and control.
The company became so successful that it stopped being simply a trading empire and became a political one. At its peak, it even had its own army of around 200,000 men. By the early 19th century, it controlled much of India, making laws and raising taxes.
Today, we live in a society that is probably more economically stratified than any other country in the world. Literally, 2 or 3% of wealthy Americans own and control probably 80% or more of everything worth owning in our country. And we've seen how these pro-corporate political policies over the last 20 years are really coming home to roost. The middle class has been decimated, and the super rich have done quite well. In fact, only the super rich have really done quite well. Fundamentally, I think the problem here is that we have this system in the United States of politics that is beholden to private money. And even a candidate like Barack Obama, who campaigned as a change agent and actually did get a record number of contributions from small average Americans, managed at the same time to get a record amount in contributions from the biggest interests out there, the insurance industry and Wall Street in particular. And when your political system depends on who can pour the most money into essentially TV propaganda, TV ads, and that's really the biggest determinant in the race. Can you hire the best marketers and PR people and advertisers, and can you raise enough money to really run a campaign that's going to overwhelm the airwaves? If you can do that, your odds of winning are probably about 4 or 5 to 1.
As to him being a phenomenon, the only phenomenon that Obama was the creation and manipulation of the media. He was a brand, the Obama brand. He was a creation and continues to be a creation / manipulation of the corporate media. Let us be honest about that. Hope, how dare that word be used and distorted the way the Obama brand has used it and distorted it.
The advertising industry gives a prize every year for the best marketing campaign of the year. 2008, they gave it to the Obama campaign, who beat out commercial competitors. The idea is we market candidates the same way we market toothpaste or lifestyle drugs or automobiles. Of course, it helps to have a lot of money. And in fact, Obama greatly outspent McCain, and not because of popular contributions. It came mostly from financial industries. He was their candidate, and his policies will presumably respond to his constituency.
You see why it was important to understand the information in War and rule from the shadows? See, now we have a foundation to understand these concepts right here. A lot of great comments going through the chat right now. I appreciate all of them, and you guys are making highly effective points. And when you realize, sorry to spur you out every time I hear democracy, but that is seriously one of my biggest pet peeves, other than stupid people laugh out. Yeah, I agree with you on that. It is very irritating to have to deal with that. And I really like that comment you made earlier about the control of language. That I have identified the control of language as one of the root cause issues, as well as division, right? These are one of the two of the foundational root cause issues that we must resolve. We must resolve the control of language issues. we can go into that a whole bunch more. I haven't even really gotten into that topic yet because I've been focusing on division, but I do bring it up quite often. It is a serious issue that we need to be aware of, and we need to push back on every single day. So keep on spurring on that democracy. Keep on doing it. That's the only way that people realize, hey, what do you mean? I need to look into this. What, you know what? I don't even know what that means. And they go look it up and they go, well, you know, that doesn't sound like that's the right thing now. We are supposed to be a republic. You're right, Iris. We are a republic, man. Put it out there. Let's go. Right? Yes, they don't understand what a republic is. They don't understand the philosophy of liberty. Like, you know, we talk about with Ron Paul. Ron Paul is the father of the rebirth of liberty, right? He brought the idea of liberty back to an entire generation. And I've talked about that many times on my show. And if you look at my Winning Saturday Night, when I did, I think it's Winning Saturday Night. Yeah, we did the Ron Paul neocon speech. I talked a lot about the philosophy of liberty there. We're going to do more of that. And we're going to play some of his campaign rallies during the campaign rallies that are going on for this next election. So I'm going to put him in the running too, to run beside MAGA, to run beside Trump, to put that, again, the philosophy of liberty back out there so people understand what it means. Yeah.
weapons of mass destruction in Iraq all over again.
Yes. Panic the people, make them think there's an emergency. There's no emergency at all. This is a once-in-a-century ripoff. And you can only do this kind of thing under emergency conditions, usually with the kind of bloodshed you saw when Pinochet introduced free markets at gunpoint in Chile.
And by the federal government, I mean Republicans and Democrats working together. And the only thing dumber than a Republican or a Democrat is when these pricks work together. We have a two-party system. The Democratic Party, which is a party of no ideas, and the Republican Party, which is a party of bad ideas. And the way it works is the Republican stands up in Congress and goes, I got a really bad idea. And the Democrat says, and I can make it shittier.
This bill does not deal with the absurdity of having the fox guarding the henhouse. I have a hard time understanding why we are giving $700 billion to the Secretary of the Treasury, who was the former CEO of Goldman Sachs, who, along with other financial institutions, actually got us into this problem.
If there's so much money available, how come it's not being spent to create jobs for millions of jobless people? And why do we continue hearing that the country's in a recovery?
Yeah, it's really crazy. You know, I mean, if you took the $1.4 trillion that were initially spent just to bail out the banks, and you had redistributed that money among all the millions of Americans who were having problems paying their mortgages and who had just lost their jobs in the previous year or two. I remember doing the math and back of the envelope determining that each one would receive a check for $350,000. The reason is because the U.S. government does not serve the people, and it's not afraid of the people. And
Agreed.
even though it knows that its actions are short-sighted and will ultimately lead to its demise, they cannot help themselves. They cannot stop themselves.
To manage wealth requires keen insight, the heart and focus of the hunter, and the understanding that wealth is not about money, but the possibilities it creates. Just as volatility may produce turbulence, there may also be dazzling moments when lightning strikes. Introducing Goldman Sachs Wealth Management.
Who got us into the financial crisis? People like, for example, Robert Rubin, the Secretary of Treasury under Clinton. His great achievement, one of his great achievements, was to destroy the New Deal legislation. It's called the Glass-Steagall Act, which protected commercial banks from risky lending. So it ensured that commercial banks would have enough liquidity, you know, and they would be regulated, and therefore you'd be pretty safe when you put your money in a bank. Investment firms, on the other hand, take out risky loans, try to make very high profit. If they get into trouble, they expect the government to come in and bail them out, and so on. The Glass-Steagall Act separated those. Rubin led the way to revoking the Glass-Steagall Act. As soon as he did so, he left the government, became a director of Citigroup, a major financial institution, and used the new powers to enable Citigroup to control insurance companies and investment firms and so on, and made plenty of profit from that for a few years until, of course, the whole system collapsed. And Citigroup is now getting tens of billions of dollars of taxpayer money to keep them alive. Okay, that's Robert Rubin. He was succeeded as Treasury Secretary by Lawrence Summers.
And it's one of the great...
Okay, Shelley. The crowd wants to hear from you.
I'm right here.
I know they want to hear from you.
I'm right here.
Wave and say
I had
hello.
a little bit of a headache. I closed my eyes and now I'm fine. Sorry,
right.
guys. Headaches happen.
They do. They do.
Jacob.
Economic minds of our time, Larry has earned a global reputation for being able to cut to the heart of the most complex and novel policy challenges. With respect to both our current financial crisis and other pressing economic issues of our time, his thinking, writing, and speaking have set the terms of the debate.
Summers, one of his main achievements was to block legislation that would regulate exotic financial instruments, credit swaps, and so on. The religion under which they operate is what's called the efficient market hypothesis. Everything will take care of itself if you just leave markets alone. They're just magic. No empirical basis, no theoretical basis, but it's a good tool for wealth of the nation. They can make a lot of money out of it.
I strongly
Summers
disagree.
blocked that legislation.
I think our true
And
free
another
market,
factor in the current
Austrian economics
disastrous
needs to be
financial crisis is
looked at. And a true free market, it
these
will
exotic
work itself
instruments
out, but
exploded
we've never
out of
really
control,
had that.
and nobody knows who owns what assets are
That's
worth.
the problem.
So again, the government has to step in and bail out the wealthy. Government, of course, means the taxpayer.
That comes down to monetary policy.
Geithner has been a failure at pretty much everything he's done in life. Most of the institutions that destroyed the economy were under his direct regulatory authority.
How do you get the job as Treasury Secretary?
By completely screwing up his job as president of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York.
That makes no sense.
Of course, it makes perfect sense. This is not new to Washington. People who will give you the wrong answer, but the answer you want, are invaluable. And they often get promoted precisely because they're willing to say and do absurd things.
Tim Geithner.
There's this thing called Keynesianism, which Ron Paul talked about a lot, and we will dive into on a different program probably. But when Chomsky talks about the free market and so on, he takes into account that it's a Keynesian system, but doesn't take into account that we could change the Keynesian system to something that is more has more integrity and more it's solid. It's more solid for a free market system, right? But again, that's another topic to dive into, just to kind of like put it into perspective, right? There are ways to make it work. We just haven't had the opportunity to do it in this country yet.
Offers not just extensive experience shaping economic policy and managing financial markets, he also has an unparalleled understanding of our current economic crisis in all of its depth, complexity, and urgency. Tim will waste no time getting up to speed. He will start his first day on the job with a unique insight into the failures of today's markets and a clear vision of the steps we must take to revive them.
First of all, let's look at the people who deregulated the industry. They're the same people that are in Obama's White House. Larry Summers is chief economic advisor. Gary Gensler, the head of the Commodities Futures Trading Commission. I mean, it's the same people that deregulated that are now being asked to re-regulate. I mean, only somebody that's completely out of their minds would believe this.
President Obama today nominated Ben Bernanke for a second four-year term as Federal Reserve Chairman. The president called his actions on the global financial crisis bold and out of the box.
As an expert on the causes of the Great Depression, I'm sure Ben never imagined that he would be part of a team responsible for preventing another.
Wall Street's wealthy and powerful are back to indulging. Pampering at the La Prairie Spa at the Ritz-Carlton involves wearing decadent hors d'oeuvres, cream costing more than $700 for less than 4 ounces, while the caviar facial costs more than $300.
Ruins turning hundreds of homes into shattered garbage. Just 2 hours away from Manhattan, a city plagued with decay. This is Camden, the most broke town in the U.S., with with up to 35% of families living in poverty.
A $175 hamburger served up at the Wall Street Burger Shop. 10 ounces of Kobe beef, seared foie gras, aged Gruyere cheese, and...
This is kind of where all the value lies. This is a white truffle as well as a black truffle.
As well as gold, as in gold leaf flakes, to garnish off the burger.
Doesn't taste like anything. It's really just to make it pretty.
There's families that's out here on the streets, a mom and her kids sleeping on the Lower Wacker Drive, cold as it's being, sleeping on the Lower Wacker Drive. When mom goes to sleep, the little kids are up watching over her, and that's sad.
Busyness boosted perhaps by bonuses coming from one street, Wall Street, the symbol of the finance industry, the financial collapse, and record-breaking compensation. $144 billion apparently, up 4% from last year's record haul.
Goldman Sachs has set aside $6.8 billion for bonuses.
Case in point, General Electric. The corporate giant received nearly $25 million in stimulus grants. In return, 18,000 U.S.-based employees were laid off. No such promises here on Main Street, where 15 million Americans are officially unemployed, and U.S. poverty levels have reached a 50-year high.
He knows what he wants, don't you, Rocco?
Sure. What's that?
Tell him, Rocco. Well, I want, he wants more. Don't you, Rocco?
Yeah, that's it. More. That's right, I want more.
Will you ever get enough? Will you, Rocco?
Well, I never have. No, I guess I won't. Do you know what you want?
Yes, and I had hopes once, but I gave them up.
Hopes for what?
A world in which there's no place for Johnny Rocco.
Mr. President, Senator from Vermont is recognized. Mr. President, there is a war going on in this country, and I'm not referring to the war in Iraq or the war in Afghanistan. I'm talking about a war being waged by some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in this country against the working families of the United States of America, against the disappearing and shrinking middle class of our country. The reality is that many of the nation's billionaires are on the warpath. They want more, more, more. Their greed has no end. And apparently there is very little concern for our country or for the people of this country if it gets in the way of the accumulation of more and more wealth and more power. Between 1980 and 2005, 80% of all new income created in this country went to the top 1%. 80% of all new income. And that's why people are wondering and asking, what's going on in my life? How come I'm working longer hours for lower wages? How come I'm worrying about whether my kids will have as good a standard of living as I've had?
So we keep producing more and more for the employer, productivity rises, but the employer doesn't give us any more at all. You do not need an advanced degree in economics, and being a professor of economics, I wouldn't advise it anyway. But you don't need it to understand that if workers are producing more and more for the employer, but he's not giving them more and more, then the whole benefit of rising productivity accrues to profits. So the people who made out like bandits in the last 30 years were the employers, number one, and whoever could get a piece of the profits the employers were getting. We call those people stock owners, shareholders. People who have a piece of a company can get a piece of the profits the company earns. That's how our system works. They did wonderfully. The quintessential story comes to this apex. I've been telling you how Americans went on a borrowing binge. Have any of you wondered, where did the money come to lend all those Americans all that money? Who's the lender? What's the source of the money? And if you understand what I'm about to tell you, you'll understand in a nutshell the remarkable quality of our society over the last 30 years. Because the origin of the money lent to the American worker were the extraordinary profits of American business. They had made so much money because the productivity went up when the wages went down that they turned around and used the extra profits that they got by not paying higher wages to lend it to the workers instead. Think of yourself now, and some of you will enjoy this, as if you were a businessman or a businesswoman, an employer. This is as close to nirvana as business gets. Instead of paying your workers higher wages over time as they work harder and better for you, you don't. Instead of that, we give them a loan, which they have to give back to us with interest. If I had a portable record machine now, I'd play the national anthem.
The United States.
That's such a sad realization. Are you muted?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I agree with you there, Jacob. I got to tell you, this is where Ron Paul would come in and say, again, it's down to monetary policy, right? The inflation of money, and talk about paying higher wages. Well, what happens when you pay workers higher wages artificially, right? The prices of goods go up, so they have to spend the money on that. We've learned this by now, and back then for these guys, it's making a lot of sense. But these guys who kind of talk that rhetoric that he was talking, they kind of leave that part out. And I think you make a great point here to say that they're not millionaires anymore, and that's part of now that he's part of the club. Yeah. I agree. So take it with a grain of salt. Like, we're here to do analysis, and I think that there's a lot of great material in here, and not some points that don't quite hit the mark. I don't think affects the entire message here. That's why I was never too worried about putting this video out for people to learn from, because so much of it does hit the target. And then people can kind of learn the rest of it. Not many people understand finance or how monetary policy works, or how the Federal Reserve works, or how inflation works. They don't, but they can still get the message that the establishment's the problem.
Now has by far the most unequal distribution of income and wealth of any major country on earth. When we were in school, we used to read the textbooks which talked about the banana republics in Latin America.
I'm Chiquita Banana, and I've come to say bananas have to ripen in a.
You mean like going after your political enemies and a bunch of Trump charges and trying to throw them in jail so they can't run for president?
We used to read the book about
that's his party.
Countries in which a handful of people owned and controlled most of the wealth of those countries. Well, guess what? That's exactly what is happening in the United States today. So I am sure that in a little while, my friends are going to come down to the floor and say, we're very concerned about the deficit. We're very concerned about the national debt. But you know what we're more concerned about? Giving huge tax breaks to the wealthiest people in this country.
Yeah, see, that's not a solution.
But Mr. President, the tax issue is just one part.
You got to understand where he comes
of what some of our wealthy friends want to see happen in this country.
Right, but that's where his perception is.
The reality
we all know his rhetoric.
That many of these folks want to bring the United States back to where we were in the 1920s. And they want to do their best to eliminate all traces of social legislation which working families fought tooth and nail to develop to bring a modicum of stability and security to their lives. There are people out there, not all, but there are some who want to privatize or completely eliminate Social Security.
Resonated with the message, though, because they just, like I said,
they want to privatize or cut back substantially on Medicare. Yeah, you're 75 years of age and you have no money. Good luck to you getting your health insurance at an affordable cost from a private insurance company. I am just sure there are all kinds of private insurance companies out there just delighted to take care of low-income seniors who are struggling with cancer or another disease. Mr. President, furthermore, there are corporate leaders out there and many members of Congress who not only want to continue, they want to expand our disastrous trade policies. My wife and I went shopping the other day, started our Christmas shopping.
I bet.
And we looked and virtually every product that was out there in the store, consumer products, was China, China, and China. We seem to be a country in which we have a 51st state named China, which is producing virtually all of the products that we as Americans consume.
He's not wrong about that. But then what did he do? He ran for president. And then when he didn't get the nomination, predictably, which I predicted, it was easy to predict because the Democrats control the superdelegates. They picked their candidates long before the nomination, right?
Yeah,
He got down on his knees and he kissed the boot. He kissed the ring, and he told all his optimistic, hopeful supporters to go vote for the establishment again when he was supposed to be an anti-establishment guy. You know what Ron Paul did when he didn't get the nomination? He didn't send his base over to vote for Mitt Romney. He said, "I'm not voting." You know, and then what did his base do? They wrote him in. Big difference there.
Mm-hmm.
叮叮当，叮叮当，铃儿响叮当，我们或许都快乐，我们坐在雪橇上。叮叮当，叮叮当，铃儿响叮当，我们或许都快乐，我们坐在雪橇上。叮叮当，叮叮当，铃儿响叮当，我们或许都快乐，我们坐在雪橇上。叮叮当，叮叮当，铃儿响叮当，我们或许都快乐，我们坐在雪橇上。冲破大风雪，我们坐在雪橇上，驰过田野，欢笑又歌唱，人生像叮当，你的精神多欢畅，今晚滑雪真快乐，把滑雪歌儿唱。
Our trade policy.
And that was a cute little segment there, but you know what they're not talking about too is the subversive influence of that country and there's some of their practices, right? And how they try to influence our country, and try to influence the social aspect of our country, right? And the people in it. You know, hey, you know, the idea of ideological subversion came from the communists, right? So, and the practice of it, that is. So, you know, they definitely talk about things the way they want to talk about it at this point in the film. But there's more that we can add as more sophisticated viewers, right? This is the part of the analysis that we all get to join in on and say, hey, you know what? We're kind of smarter than this part of the of the film. Although I think the build up to this has been actually really brilliant. So you get to this part with Sanders, you're like, how much longer I got to listen to this guy? Just a little bit longer. We'll get through it.
Jacob's got a question.
Oh yeah, Jacob,
in the loss of millions of.
Not so brushed up on my Chinese geography, but is Xinghai the same provenance with the current genocide? Yeah, I believe it is. I think if I remember it right, it is. I did watch a lot of ADV China. Those guys were awesome. If you ever want to learn anything about China from the inside out and from people who lived there for like 20 years, I think they call it the China Show now, but ADV China was the original name of it. Lao Wade 69 and Sepultura. Those guys are amazing. Just go absorb their content, go on a marathon, binge watch. You will learn so much about China from a real factual point of view from two men who lived there for 20 years apiece and had to literally run for their lives from that China, from the government, and are still, you know, facing attacks from them today from afar. So two great guys. Don't always see eye to eye to them politically all the time, but they as far as China goes, you can learn a lot from those dudes. I mean, a lot. I'd embargo China, but it would be really painful to the poor in the U.S. who rely on cheap Chinese shit unless we reprioritize. Yeah, I mean, we've felt some crunch of the exporting of labor to other big countries with big populations and low cost labor, right? And I won't exclude India from that when it comes to help desk and in the technology field, right? Because during the .com boom and bust, they exported a lot of our jobs over there after people like me worked hard at optimizing the systems. And what we came to find out is we were dumbing down the systems so that people like that could take the jobs and lower the wages of those help desk and support jobs and here in America. It really did do a number on the technology industry as well. So you have the manufacturing industry and you have the technology industry both taking a hit from exporting jobs to get more profits by using lower wage labor abroad. I'm sorry, abroad.
Good paying jobs as large corporations and CEOs have said, why do I want to reinvest in America when I can go to countries where people are paid 50 cents, 75 cents an hour?
Yeah, but,
that's what I'm going to do. To heck with the working people of this country.
Yeah, that's
workers
a
in other
factual
parts
statement.
of the world were cheaper.
And I will tell you right now,
modern telecommunications made it possible to coordinate with your managers all over the world as quickly as it used to be to walk down the hall and talk to your manager at the end of the corridor. And so America moved production out of the United States massively. A little statistic again, because economists are expected to throw statistics. I don't want to do too much, but a little, just so you remember that I am an economist. 60% of the goods coming into the United States from China are produced by subsidiaries of American corporations. There's a great temptation in this country to talk about the Chinese. Yes, it's Chinese workers who make them, but 60% of what comes in here is produced by American subsidiaries, American companies that are employing Chinese workers in China because they're a hell of a lot cheaper than American workers.
Yep.
Here.
This is a big topic of the time.
Are we saddled with this disastrous trade policy? There are people who actually want to expand it. Now, one of the things that we're going to see going on is that while we struggle with a record-breaking deficit and a large national debt caused by the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, caused by tax breaks for the wealthy, caused by an unpaid-for Medicare Part D prescription drug program, caused by the Wall Street bailout, driving up the deficit, driving up the national debt. That some people can say, oh my goodness, we got all of those expenses, and then we got to give tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires, but we want to balance the budget. Gee, how are we going to do that? Well, obviously, we know how they're going to do that. We're going to cut back on health care. We're going to cut back on education. We're going to cut back on child care. We're going to.
Have we done that? No. No, we funnel more money into it. It's not that, but this is where Sanders, this is his big thing, man. This is people that aren't sophisticated could fall for this, right? Right. I know. He's talking, he'll throw the facts in there, truth stuff. Like, yeah, we're exporting jobs. That's a bad thing. Right. But then he'll come back with the worst takes on him. Right. But, I guess these guys that put this, like, think he's making some good points, and look what it says right here, extending Bush administration tax cuts. So he's talking against the neocons right here, which is, again, we're just playing WWE in this day and age, right? We didn't have a true choice yet, right? We hadn't reached that point yet. Yeah, okay, I'm talking to the mic. So yeah, sorry we had to get through this, but let's just give him a hard time as he's talking about this crap, because, and I'll put it up on the screen like this. So when the rewatch crew comes through, they know that we weren't sitting here going, oh yeah, we totally buy this stuff. Because it's hard for me to listen to it too. Because Bernie, man, and that whole crew and all the people who went along with them, man, it just was like very frustrating for a Ron Paul person to sit there and listen to. After all the work we'd done for 2 runs with Ron Paul, to have this guy come along and mimic him and try to be that anti-war, for the people kind of guy. He's supposed to be the honest guy. And I heard so many people just fall for his bullshit. It was very frustrating. And then you see him take the knee, bends down, he kisses the shoe, he kisses the ring, and just gives all of his supporters back over to the establishment. And he did it twice. He did it twice. It's just like, it's so hard to watch. I get it. I'm with you guys. It's just like he comes up with this crap. Oh, we take it away from this and that and that and that. No. No. That's what it is. And taxing the rich, as we know by now, is not the solution to the problem. Because if you take all the money from all the wealthy people in the country, you're still barely making a scratch on anything. All you're doing is hurting everybody else, because now there's no jobs and there's nowhere for that money to come from to help people earn a living, right? So you got a problem at this point, but they never talk about that. They just think that it's all going to work out. Let's go.
To cut back on Pell programs. We just don't have enough money for working families and their needs. We're going to cut back on food stamps. We're surely not going to expand unemployment compensation. We got a high priority.
That's how I used to call it.
President, we have got to.
He has a method to his talk.
Tax breaks.
He panders, he slanders.
I mean, that's what this whole place is about, isn't it?
Slander.
They fund the campaigns. They get what's due them.
I'm Jason Calabry with the Financial News, and today we're talking to a real Irishman and someone in the money business about what's going on in Ireland with the Celtic Tiger and the banks are hurting so much, the downfall. What's the story here?
Do you really want to know?
I'd love to know.
Well, I'll tell you, it's like what has happened all over the Western world for the last 20 or 30 years. Greed, and more fucking greed and cheap money. And in Ireland, it's a tragedy what happened to the Tiger. We have, I'd say, 4 causes. We had a stupid fucking government. We had a regulator that was asleep at the wheel. We had very deceitful and conniving and corrupt developers. And of course, above all, wanking fucking bankers. Wanking bankers. We had these arseholes that for the last 20, 30 years are getting these massive bonuses, these employees and directors of banks, on the misfortune of the working class and getting these huge bonuses and salaries. But, you know, if you and all these arseholes should be thrown in jail and the keys thrown away for the rest of their life. And you know, sir, if you went in and you're unemployed and you wanted to take a loaf of bread out of a store or a supermarket to feed your family, guess what? You'll be up in court for it. These assholes are living all over the world now on the backs of the misfortunate working people. And who's going to pay for all this? We've mortgaged the next generation or two. Who's going to pay for it? The working man. We got the labourer, the small farmer, the fisherman, the nurse, the teacher, the policeman, the fireman, the plumber, the carpenter. Fuck's sake, man. This is a joke.
So I'm sensing a wee bit of discontent?
You are indeed, sir. And by the way, let's not be too cocky in this part of the world, North America either. All these debts that people have accumulated over the last 30 years. Hey, everybody gets their day in the sunshine.
And you know, speaking of the Celtic Tiger and all that you mentioned, you know that Michael Flatley is really from Chicago. Well, that's another story.
Fuck off.
Well, yeah, I mean, the notion of my giving advice to elites in the United States is kind of comical because I don't see why they should listen to me. They listen to themselves. They don't listen to people like me. But the first advice I would give to elites in the United States, assuming they would pay any attention, it was on a sign that I saw in the New York Times of demonstrators down at Wall Street in October of 2008 after the crash. There were demonstrators down there, and they're carrying a huge sign, and the sign said, "Jump, fuckers." Now, that's the advice I would give them. The first advice is jump from the highest place you can find.
All right, let's talk. You know that we're playing some copyrighted music right here, so let's talk over it. It's the greatest transfer of wealth in human history. Well, that's what they called it, right? With the housing bubble and the bailouts. Yeah, that's what it was called and known. But hey, we're still doing it today, right? Just in different ways. What do you think all that stuff, the supplements for the lockdowns were? Yeah, wasn't a big transfer of wealth? Dramatically increased by the government immunity to prosecute for domestic spying. Yeah, we should, but we don't. We just participate in it. Extends the patriot without making any reforms. Yep. Well, yeah. So did the next administration, right? Sure did. Cracks down on government whistleblowers more than any other president in history. Sure did. Yep. No worries, man. Times changed, man. So even in these dark days, we didn't know it, but there was hope around the corner, and you know, there's effort being made to do something about this. We still is. Turn down the music. We can't hear you. Oh. Okay, good idea. I can always just do this, can't I? Oof. Hey, I'm used to talking with loud music going on, man. I'm a musician, right? You guys ever been on stage? The monitors are like loud. It's depending on where you're at, though. I've walked off stage almost death sometimes.
Jesus.
Yep. Yeah. Ears ringing for days. Give permits to BP and oil companies, exempt them from laws, and yeah, right.
You just
They do.
spill your oil wherever you want.
Well, they do, and they make us pay for this quote unquote climate change. Yeah, right. We're supposed to get in the Paris Accords, and that's going to make everything better. Oh, there's Monsanto, right? Monsanto has managed in this day and age to become an afterthought. I'm gonna change that. I was thinking about that today as I was ordering groceries. I was like, people mocking the organic food industry and thinking that it's not a big deal. Well, guess what happens when you consume GMOs and pesticides? You end up going to the doctor for major problems down the road because it accumulates in your system, over time. And people are like, oh yeah, it's all this and that. They don't know what they're talking about when they say that. Eat your pesticides. See how good that works out for you.
They don't see the rise in food allergies and stuff like that.
Right? Eat your fake food. See how that works out for you.
I raised my boy to flour. What?
I raised my boy to know what clean, real food was from the time he was able to eat solid food. It was a common theme in our house. Clean water, clean food, clean, real food. That's what we want, right? And we used to say it back and forth to each other.
A war on terrorism. Well, that's what many folks are asking, especially after the FBI raided the homes of several anti-war activists and leaders in Minneapolis, Chicago, and possibly other cities in the Midwest. Now, members of the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force apparently seized personal photos, computers, and cell phones, also serving federal grand jury subpoenas on several activists.
Well, the anti-war protesters themselves have said that this is an attempt to intimidate them so that they cease organizing anti-war demonstrations. I think it's much more serious even than that. And what the United States government is doing is establishing in the public's mind that anyone who criticizes the so-called war on terror is giving material aid to terrorism. You see, we don't have a war against Iraq or war against Afghanistan. We have a war against terror. And under the rubric of terror, the government has stripped us of our civil liberties. And so what they're doing now is to create the impression and get public acceptance of the idea that people who protest the war against terror are aligned with terrorists. And the definition of material support is one of those very vague police state terms that can be interpreted however the government wants.
Well, President Obama signed the controversial $858 billion tax cut legislation into law Friday. At least a quarter of the tax savings under the deal will go to the wealthiest 1% of the population. The only group that'll see its taxes increase are the nation's lowest paid workers. The only group that'll see its taxes increase are the nation's lowest paid workers. The only group that'll see its taxes increase are the nation's lowest paid workers. At the same time that this tax bill was passed, which will increase taxes on the working poor and decrease, of course, at the highest level, the wealthiest Americans, link the war with spending on the war with what we're spending on people at home and dealing with poverty here.
Well, this became a very prominent theme that Martin Luther King beat home, especially in the last years of his life during the Vietnam War, that especially because we're going into debt. I mean, we're building a kind of debt peonage system, which is used then as an excuse to go after wage earners, to go after systems like Social Security. I mean, one of the most pernicious things that Obama did in this tax bill was reduce contributions to Social Security.
Hang in there, buddy.
Because, of course, that's next on the target, as well as raise the deficit by $700 and $900 billion. And what's terrifying about movements like the Tea Party is that they provide a kind of emotional consistency. And of course, that undercurrent of racism towards undocumented workers, towards Muslims is very much part of the language of that pernicious right wing, but it embraces
Yeah,
all things
propaganda
military,
again, right?
as if somehow the military is not part of government. It's an irrational political policy. Nobody, they want to get government
worry,
off their backs,
this
but
guy's not being
everybody
listened
wants to
to in this
extend
day and
unemployment
age.
benefits, Social Security, Medicare, and of course
At all.
not touch the big, the force that is draining hollowing the country out from the inside, which is the military-industrial complex, 50% of all discretionary
But that's
spending.
not but see, then you go
and
back
so
to
as these deficits, we've now racked up the largest deficits in human
complex
history,
is
and
a
as
problem,
these
man.
deficits are ratcheted upwards,
it's still a problem.
and there is an inability to question the self-destructive quality of the armament industry, then
you know what the Tea Party stands for? It stands for taxed enough already. That's what it is. That's why it's the Tea Party. It's not because of the Boston Tea Party. It's because of taxed enough already. Yet this guy's like saying the opposite. So he's very unsophisticated. Let's listen to him make a fool out of himself.
it's taken out on the backs of the working class. And our working class is already in tremendous financial straits, and the middle class.
The incoming House Banking Committee Chair, Spencer Bach.
That's the Green Party lady, right? I think that's the Green Party lady, if I'm right. Let's look at history. America has historically been prepared for the previous war. My father-in-law sent kids to die in Afghanistan because he still had unarmored HMVs. Oh yeah, I remember those. That they would go over the landmines and they would just destroy them from the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. So look at the look where they're getting this from. So, yeah, let's just skip to that guy. I don't really like him. I never liked him back then. I never liked this part of it. Let's see. I don't mind skipping ahead on some of these guys.
As, and I quote,
let's just see what this guy
a
says.
consulting house to multinational corporations.
You see, when I read the description, there's a great comment in there. It says that this film starts out really great, and then it kind of like curtails into this kind of like, let's blame the corporation stuff. Let's get to right about what's this right? Let's get about right to here, and we'll get back on track. I really don't need to listen to that kind of rhetoric.
To a global audience mostly unaware that America is building new tactical nuclear weapons designed to blur the distinction between nuclear and conventional war. But I think the real tragedy is that Obama, the brand, appears to have crippled or absorbed much of the anti-war movement, the peace movement.
Exactly.
The out of Iraq
Max.
caucus is out of action.
A lot of people don't understand.
Its members can't even come up with a form of words of why they are silent.
Yep, Jill Stein. That's
On March
right.
the 21st, a demonstration at the Pentagon by the once mighty United for Peace and Justice drew only a few thousand.
Isn't she the one
The outgoing president
Trump
of UPJ, Leslie Kagan, says her people aren't turning up because, and I quote, it's enough for many of them that Obama has a plan to end the war and that things are moving in the right direction.
The Jonas brothers are here. They're out there somewhere. Sasha and Malia are huge fans. But boys don't get any ideas. I have 2 words for you. Predator drones. You will never see it coming.
All right, so like, how many times have you guys seen that clip right there, right? But not understood the context of it. He's talking to the Jonas brothers about his daughters, but people will play that clip and paint it in a different light. It's really funny when you see the real original context of it and how it gets moved along over the years. I feel the need to stress my father-in-law holds no blame in my heart. He had no choice thanks to politicians. I understand that. And I've
Orders are
known
orders.
people. I've known people like your father, and I totally understand it. It's on us, the people, to make sure that we do something about that. Because once the corruption is in the system, well, we consent to that with our vote, don't we? Or we refuse to consent to it with our vote, but we do participate in the system. And if we don't do the things we need to do as individuals to correct the system, to bring integrity and honesty back into the system, then yes, unfortunately, good people will have to make bad decisions because they are told to do so, and that's just the way the military structure is. Apologies for my, for the country, to anyone affected like that. These things used to horrify me. I remember there's this one documentary about depleted uranium. It used to trouble me so much.
Tears and anger after another airstrike left again innocent civilians dead.
This helps us remember
This time around, the attack took place in Garuch, a remote village in the Lagman province that was attacked by coalition forces for the 4th time in the past year. These people show us the clothes of those who died. I lost everything, says this woman. I lost my husband and my 2 sons. What have I done wrong? There is nothing left for me except these orphans. Days after the attack, the villagers are still collecting the body parts, and children cry, fearing that the bombs will come again. The people in the village say they're tired of the bombs and of seeing their children die. There is no Al-Qaeda here, no Taliban, they say. Shortly after the attack, demonstrations in Lagman called the Americans to leave their country. Human rights organizations say nearly 700 civilians were killed in operations by foreign and Afghan forces against the militants until October last year.
I've said that we need to increase the size of our military, which politically, if it got to the floor, probably would pass. But there, as you know, a whole bunch of folks on the left who think that that is a waste of money. I think it's important.
You remember at the beginning when he was talking about how he's going to end the wars, he opposed the wars, I'll do it. If you elect me, it'll be over before you know it. Remember all that? Here he is
for us to do
afterwards.
Today, President Obama scored a victory to keep those detainees locked up indefinitely without even getting one chance to prove their innocence in
when he said that?
Yep.
We also learned the Obama administration will continue the Bush policy of extraordinary rendition, the practice of sending terror suspects to prisons in third-party countries for interrogation.
The cell was about 3 feet wide, 6 feet deep, and about 7 feet high. Was my home for 10 months and 10 days. Whenever I heard the guards coming to open my door, I would just, think this is it for me. That would be my last day. And it was so painful to the point that I forgot every moment I enjoyed in my life.
Right? And Ron Paul used to talk about blowback. Like when we go over there and do this to them, well,
the real picture of Omar Khadr, which has been revealed in the last few months as the contents of U.S. government documents have been disclosed for the first time, is that of a frightened, wounded, 15-year-old boy. A boy, like other children wrongfully involved in armed conflict, who had no business being there, who sat slumped against a bush while a battle raged around him. Omar was then shot in the back, at least twice, by a U.S. soldier, and was then about to be executed when another soldier intervened.
Okay, what's going on with the Americans? Just saying that because the approach should be very bad about bro. So I have to say what I said. I don't care about me, that's well, I do care about you, but
yeah, man. Where taxpayer dollars are going. Thanks to the smooth talking establishment candidate. It's psychology, PR, and all the mechanisms of subversion to convince the American people that he wasn't like everybody else.
And they made sure that we had boogeymen, that we'd always be afraid of them, and we could never see them as anything good.
Chiquita is the world's most well-known banana brand. Colombia is one of the world's largest banana exporting nations, and what is a multinational, multi-billion-dollar industry. So with so much money at stake, it's perhaps no surprise that Chiquita became embroiled in the crossfire from Colombia's bloody civil war. Between 1997 and 2004, Chiquita gave $1.7 million to paramilitaries from the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, known as the AUC, for what Chiquita later characterized as self-defense. But the AUC death squads killed thousands of civilians, as well as intimidating and murdering banana workers and their union leaders.
And today, what will we deal with today? We're not there yet, but we know where the big battle is going on right now, right? This is the work of the establishment. This is why anti-establishment. We stand against all of these things. Back in 2011, they weren't scared to show you the horrors of war. And there's a warning that comes with this video too, that you will see some horrors of war in this. We can't, as we live our lives every day, we can't forget what happens around the world in our name. Use this motivation. Say we're not going to allow this to happen to future generations. Yeah, they just leave them laying around when they're done. This is what happens. That depleted uranium on the ground. In Africa, child soldiers. Back in the Coney days, even though the Coney scare came up after he was already gone, that was another gimmick. I could probably run over one day. It got me. It fooled me. I was really pissed about it until I figured out it was a scam. And then the guy who ran the scam ended up running down the street naked, like on some kind of drugs. Anybody remember the Coney scam? Hey, fuck you. How you doing, man? Thank you for being here.
Hey, fuck you.
Little warning, there are some graphic pictures in this documentary we're watching. It does show some of the horrors of war. Hopefully you got on the rewatch, because the beginning of this documentary has a lot of good information in it, and the one we watched before has a lot of good information in it. Okay, remember Blackwater, now Z, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I just like to give out the warnings, man. These old school documentaries aren't scared to show things like that. So I like to make sure everybody knows what they're getting into here. And
well, first of all, look at the controversies that Democrats and progressives were so vocal about during the Bush years. They objected vehemently over the Bush administration's wiretapping of American citizens without any court warrants or judicial oversight. They objected when the Bush administration put not American citizens but foreign nationals into cages at Guantanamo merely on the say-so of the president that these people were terrorists. Here you're talking about the worst elements of those policies, but even more extreme. You're talking about American citizens not being merely wiretapped by the president with no oversight, but murdered, assassinated, killed, based solely on the unchecked say-so of the president. And I think what really has to be emphasized is look at how many times over the past decade that the administration, first the Bush administration, then the Obama administration, has accused people of being terrorists, the worst of the worst, and it turned out that they were completely wrong. Hundreds of people who were at Guantanamo ended up being released because there was no evidence of wrongdoing. Ever since the Supreme Court in 2008 granted habeas corpus rights to detainees, 33 out of 39 Guantanamo detainees who brought their cases before a court were ordered released by federal judges on the grounds that there was no evidence to justify the accusations against them. So there are few things more dangerous than allowing the executive branch to label people terrorists and treat them accordingly.
I mean, they went after foreign terrorists, and now they're going after what they call domestic terrorists, who also are not, guilty of anything, hence the Whitmer trials.
That's a total, like, that's an attack against the anti-establishment, but it's just like, so they have to.
Yeah, but they're using the same tactics. They're using, look, terrorists.
Yeah, they set it up, right? They set it up.
They just changed the playing field.
I have two words for you.
Sorry about that, guys.
Predator drones.
You see what I'm saying?
You will never see it coming.
I guess the fact that he's making a joke out of it, right? That the predator drones are not a joke. Yeah, sorry about that.
5 years ago, that would have torn me up.
I mean, again, motivation to stay clear. That's what it was for us back then.
Too.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was like back in the day. That was what it was for us. It was motivation. Why we worked tireless hours on the internet trying to get people to realize what was going on in the world, and not to buy what was going on TV, and to realize that the political paradigm of the time was a fake one. These type of images, these type of results help get the message across.
On Capitol Hill, about resistance the false to U.S. militarism has all but collapsed,
motivated the grassroots.
With no opposition whatsoever in the Senate and only 48 nay votes in the House. The Congress last week passed the biggest military budget since the end of World War II. Only 42 Democrats, including just 12 members of the Congressional Black Caucus, dared to defy their warmongering president
we have no choice
and
but
compliant House
Otherwise,
leadership.
they just win.
Forget about Obama's phony rhetoric. The proof is in the numbers. The military budget firmly cements Barack Obama's place as the biggest pro-war president in 2 generations. Today, the United States, although it is the world's only superpower, spends almost as much as all of the rest of the world's militaries combined. The U.S. defense authorization for 2011 is $725 billion. China, with the second most expensive military machine on the planet, spends less than $80 billion a year. If Barack Obama lasts for 8 years in office, he is on track to spend $5 trillion
you're not going
on the
to,
Pentagon,
Jacob. Don't worry about that.
Significantly more than George Bush,
keep doing you.
Who in turn spent a lot more than Ronald Reagan. But, as they say on the TV commercials, that's not all. The defense budget doesn't include expenditures for Homeland Security, Veterans Affairs, nuclear weapons work at the Department of Energy, military aid to other countries through the Department of State, NASA space programs that are really military projects, and the interest payments on past military expenditures that were financed by debt. Inclusion of those hidden costs of war would bring military-related spending to well over $1 trillion a year and rising all the time. In real dollars, the U.S. is spending far more on the military than at any time during the Cold War, when there was another superpower in competition, and more than President Lyndon Johnson spent at the height of the Vietnam War. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. broke with LBJ over that war, in part because he knew, in Dr. King's words, that America would never invest the necessary funds or energies in rehabilitation of its poor so long as adventures like Vietnam continue to draw men and skills and money like some demonic, destructive suction tube. Obama is not merely a continuation of the Bush administration's war policies. He has accelerated the descent into a war economy.
The world now demands a maturity of America that we may not be able to achieve. This way of settling differences is not just. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. Somehow this madness must cease. We must stop now. I speak as one who loves America. To the leaders of our own nation, the great initiative in this war is ours. The initiative to stop it must be ours.
They imagine that, very motivating to do something, especially when we had an anti-war president candidate than Ron Paul. Ron Paul was like, we'll just go, we'll leave, we'll get the hell out of there. He meant it. And it was very frustrating
when you wrote that every one of this country's primary institutions is anti-democratic,
anti-war left to go and put someone in who's obviously an establishment
and operation.
candidate.
That's a strong statement. Every one of the country's primary institutions, meaning
educational institutions, large-scale educational institutions, meaning institutions of government, bureaucratic institutions, major institutions of media and communication, major institutions of a recognizably economic kind as well, and I think large cultural institutions too. Again, something like the media.
Is anti-democratic, meaning
that two things. One, hierarchical. They're all hierarchical structures, and hierarchy means inequality, of power. Secondly, I think they're fundamentally elitist in character, which is to say that each of them involves a definition of who should lead or control that institution based upon criteria which can only be met by a relatively few. So it becomes a way of excluding.
And that means anti-democratic. You do not consult the people. You do not involve the people.
The basic idea of liberal democracy is that the only economy that's consonant with liberal democracy is capitalism. And capitalism presupposes a class structure in which those who own and control the means of production own and control the means of production. And they have a lot more clout politically than those who don't. For me, that's a fundamentally undemocratic political economy.
See, the problem is that in ideologies, people don't talk about how to eliminate the corruption in their ideology. So they propose another ideology that they won't talk about. They propose it in a utopian sense, right? Like the ideal situation when the system's already corrupt.
So for me, democratic capitalism is a contradiction.
Right? It's already corrupt. Corrupt is corrupt.
For me,
corrupt is
the
corrupt.
only system of social relationships that's consonant with democracy,
that's to him, right,
is a high level of economic independence and economic equality. Because without economic independence, if I'm dependent for somebody else for what I have to have access to live.
Thank you, Shelley.
Might be a nice guy, might employ me, but I'm weak relative to him. I'm powerless relative to him. And he's got the hammer on me. And I damn well better satisfy and please him, or I'm in trouble. And I'm in trouble at the
this
level
is where
of
I part ways
necessity. Okay.
With the
living and dying.
The solutions. Because
yeah,
I
certainly not living well.
As
but, maybe not living
you have
well.
to remove the enablement.
So for me, socialist
change it to another
democracy
system
or
that
democratic
keeps corrupted.
socialism
If the corruption's there, no
is
matter
in
what
fact
system you put in place,
the only
corrupt will
coherent
corrupt it.
mix of
you have to start the
political
root cause
democracy
issue
and social economic equality.
And that's where a lot of these
adds up in my
documentaries at the
mind
time and the people at the time that
something that
opposed
looks like
it in very meaningful ways. I
democracy.
mean,
So
they had the right
I argue
motivation,
that
but not the right
capitalist
solutions.
democracy is in fact a sham. It's never going to be
It's the corruption
a
in the
real
system.
democracy.
That's why I
because it
point out
can't.
things the way I do.
And the only real democracy, at least then theoretically, is a socialist democracy.
Yeah, I disagree.
What you immediately
strongly
run into if you make that argument, oh, the Russia, what about Stalin? What about Pol Pot?
It's the system of control and the system of abuse.
They drag out all
Cycles.
these horror stories of societies that have purportedly tried socialist democracy. And my answer to that, and my short answer to that, is there's very little in those societies that I would credit as in any way socialist or democratic. Okay. In the Soviet Union, it wasn't the people who owned and controlled the means of production; it was the state.
The continuous,
exactly, because that's what
consistent
socialism
growth
needs.
of centralized power in our society. People think of Ronald Reagan as an opponent of state power and as someone who wanted to get government off our backs.
Again, we're
I would
back
like
to 2011
to take the
here.
lead in taking
They
government
haven't
off
seen
the
what
backs
a
of the
true
American people and
anti-establishment looks
turning
like
you
at this
loose to do what I know you can do.
But actually, one of the legacies of the Reagan era is a stronger state, a state that doesn't do as much in terms of regulation of the.
I'm going to stop it for a second and talk. Because I'm just going to talk over these guys. The thing that they don't realize is that the false left right paradigm was ramping up under Reagan. If you look at his administration and who he came in with, right, the neocons came into the right, and we're continuing to come into the right at that point to play the heels, right? This is something that they don't seem to realize. These guys that are talking and have talked a little bit here and there through this documentary don't seem to realize. And I know Scott Noble kind of leans that way, and so his documentary is going to lean that way. However, we have sophisticated minds here, right? We see past all this stuff, right? It is, yeah, very much so, very much so. Yeah, and see, the reason why is because it eventually leads to the same thing. With the corrupt in charge, the corruption will persist no matter what system you have. That's why we need a solution culture, right? We need a culture that attacks the root cause issues at a generational level, so that we build the immunity to their methods, the psychology that we talk about, the subversion that we talk about, and the mechanisms for that. And the only way we can do that is by building the antivirus software in our minds from a very young age, so that these type of mechanisms don't work. So when you hear a guy like this talk, look, that's not going to work if it's corrupted, right? Or these are fallacies because they're not they're false premises in a sense, right? And you understand that in order to have a honest and high integrity system, you have to have honest and high integrity people working it, that will follow the rule of law, that will follow the Constitution to a T. Any subversion of the Constitution is going to corrupt the system. And that's what the left has continually done through any mechanisms. And it's been the introduction of socialism into our society that has caused that subversion to the Constitution, right? The way they want to reinterpret things through the control of language, the way they want to change the culture through the cycle of abuse and information-based and traumatic-based cycles of abuse, right? That's the thing that they don't seem to get at this point in the documentary. And then I'm happy to be looking at this again through wiser eyes now, and seeing the points that maybe I didn't get at the time. I wouldn't have agreed with this guy anyways, but saying that, hey, maybe I just don't know enough about it to make a decision at that point. However, the lead up to this point in the documentary was, I think at least halfway through it was like really valid. And then of course we're going to go through here and analyze why these guys are wrong. So this is the cool thing about looking back on these old school documentaries. You can see the good parts and the bad parts, and you can see through experience how that they didn't quite work out, and they're not kind of worked out. And now we have a real choice that we can make, as long as we can push through their new system to try that they're trying to roll out to stop it, right? this whole system of trying to bring. You got to realize if we don't go anti-establishment, they'll roll out this false left right paradigm again. They love it. It's done so much for them. They had control of everything. And that's why they panic. That's why they're doing the things they're doing to Trump and other people, is because they see the crack that we got into, that the crack in their system that we were able to get into and now push back on. This is why it's so important that we never let the neocons take the right again. Like we have to keep that secured, or they will pull this whole routine again, and they'll go back to being, oh yeah, we're against each other, but we're really working together. And we have to keep this in mind, no matter what they throw at us. That's the only way that we're going to have a foothold politically. Now, as individuals, we have to fight for the things that are going to change the system and remove the enablement from the ground level, the education, what we do with ourselves and our families, keeping our families together, the education system, taking our kids away from the bad education and putting them into good education. These are the things we talk about on Unveiling Reality. So let's continue here, and we'll see where it goes here, and we'll be through here in just a little bit.
The economy, as the states growing out of the New Deal, fair deal kind of tradition, but a state which, in terms of defense, in terms of the protection of American interests abroad, in areas such as the advancement of technology or the law and order state, all of those involve extensions of national power.
Is this for better or worse?
I think it's for worse. I think it's for worse because it's been accompanied, as we know, by an incredible amount of apathy on the part of the American electorate in terms of the simple fact of voting.
I sure hope so, Iris. I sure hope so. I believe we will. I think there's a balance that flips back and forth. What we're going for is the least amount of corruption we can possibly get. And we have to, the more that we raise awareness about it, the more we push back, the more they show their hand. But it really comes down to us building a culture of solutions and not just a culture of reactions, right? And we do have a voice right now. We have to fight for that voice, and we have to do it by any means. And that's what the anti-establishment is about. I do want to dive deeper into what the anti-establishment means these days and why it's so important. Without dismantling the current elite monster, we have nothing. 2020 proved that. That's absolutely right. That's why I started this show.
The day you give up is the day they win.
Yeah, exactly.
Go down swinging. Fighting.
Yeah, you have to go down swinging for the future generations, or else you failed them, in my opinion. And that's the way I put that burden on myself. Yep, exactly. They thought they got arrogant. See, now the tyrant's biggest weakness of a tyrant is their arrogance, right? They always get arrogant. That's where we can make our moves. But we have to maintain our ground. We can't give ground back. And yes, they'll throw things at us we've never seen before because they're steps ahead of us, right? But there's always a way. And if anything we've proven in the last several elections is there's always a way. Even Ron Paul, though he wasn't successful at getting in and doing something, he started a grassroots movement that awakened so many people that we were able to do more down the road when we had a candidate that had the other qualities it took to win this fight at the time, right? You had to be independent. You had to be not able to be influenced. You had to have the money to fight back on equal ground and reach people. You had to have the what was people would say was they would say was like, the harsh rhetoric, I guess I would say, like, of Trump, right? But he came right out calling out the media, corruption. He's calling it. And even though he wasn't perfect the first round, the run through, at least he was against the establishment. At least you could judge a man by his enemies, right? You can judge a person by their enemies, where they stand. The entire establishment was against him. And like I said with Ron Paul, if Ron Paul got in, I said, you watch the neocons go running back to the left where they came from, and they sure did. And that's where they stand right now. So we got to keep that paradigm and that we have right now in place so that we can actually try to make ground, make more ground. And I think in 2024, we will make more ground. I think that we will. The pattern that I'm seeing and I've observed throughout this entire journey I've been on is one of slow progress that we're making. And every time we make an advancement, they're going to hit us with some new stuff. We're going to learn from it, and then we're going to make another advancement, right? And we may get push back a step, but then we can make another 2 steps forward, right? So we got to keep making it happen. We can never give up fighting. We got to keep hope alive. And the more people that we bring together and form the solution culture, the better chance we have of doing it. Let's see how we do it here.
We also can't be afraid to change. That's one of the things that people, they cling to what they think things are rather than what they are seeing them to be.
That's right. That's right.
So, I mean, they're comfortable in where they are the same way the politicians got comfortable, the people got comfortable. They were just like, well, they're going to screw us over at any side anyway. So this is the one that's best suits me. But they're not, because they lie and they treat us like children. Trump came along and treated us like adults and told us, look, this is what's going on. I don't know where you people have been. And it was harsh. It was hard to swallow. But I broke with 4 generations of Democrats to vote for Trump. I never thought I would do that, ever. But I couldn't stand what I saw. Couldn't stand it. I couldn't take it. Yeah. And it was hard. It's even hard for me to admit now, because I feel like I betrayed like how many generations of my family. But they had this certain thing that was not right. It wasn't what the truth was. They were going with what they were told rather than, what they could research themselves. They didn't have the abilities we do. We have a far greater reach and far greater research capabilities than they ever had. So we can see the truth, but now we have to spread the truth. And that's harder the more they clamp down on us.
And some people, believe this too, and that they have to be pushed to a certain point, a breaking point, and to the point of starving and being penniless and being desperate in a desperate situation. And I say that we can hopefully do the work now to head that off. I do not want to see this happen to us. Nope. I don't want to think that, and it only takes 13% or so to make change happen. And we don't have to have 100%. That's not a true thing. We didn't need it in the War for Independence, and we don't need it now. It really just takes a grassroots effort and an awakening. But we have to have the right solutions in hand, right? We can't keep playing defense and reacting. We have to get ahead of the game. That's why on the board, as I pulled up earlier, solution culture isn't the 5th veil. It's beyond them, right? Because that's where we can implement the solutions to pull down all veils and hopefully have a better system where we living in a more honest way. That's what it comes down to. And as Jacob pointed out earlier, it is the control language. And as Gary Lamb and myself point out on Thursday nights, it is healing division. We must heal division so we can come together. We must control the language back so that we can have conversations and communicate. And so that the subversion can stop. And it's going to be generational. We are the ones that have to start fighting the hardest right now in order to secure generations down the road, understand this information and keep the fight going, but hopefully in a better environment and system for it. Hopefully we're making it easier for them, right? And that's why we need to be part of solution culture and working together to implement solutions that remove the enablement of that empowers the corruption. That's the cycle of abuse that is funded and maintained by the cycle of control, right? That's the 3rd and the 4th veil, so as we talk about. So Unveiling Reality right now is kind of closing in on the end of the UFO alien rabbit hole. And so we're kind of doing double work here with both of these programs, because we're going back to these other issues here. But we're going to circle back around to all that on Unveiling Reality. And that's when we really go over the retrospective board and we look hard at these veils of perception. So you can also go back and hit my playlist, right? So my playlist has a lot of this information from the earlier days. I also have another series called The Valley of the Shadows, my first series, about these topics where we talk about ideological subversion and all these other types of things. So it's a big collection of work. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. This is the all the collection put into a way to think about it, see it, and to have solutions to work with. So we're going to keep going at it. We're going to keep going at it. So you want to know something sad, Shelley? You betrayed no one. Trump was right, and I would argue still is a Democrat. The left is just gone so wild it makes them look right. I don't know about that. I think if anything, I think of him as an independent. I think of him as an independent, and I think the more he gets hit and the more they come after him, the more he's gonna change as well, because that's really what it takes to change, is when you start seeing that you're getting hit and you're getting betrayed, you're getting lied to, you're getting treated unfairly. And you see the corruption in the system. He's talking about the corruption in the system all the time. And that's just going to bring people back to make a difference. I'll tell you one thing though, ain't nobody else that's running going to do it. Yeah. And nor can they. We're going to start all over with someone green trying to take the beginner's course. We're going to try to trust a person that's being funded by, big corporations and lobbyists and stuff like that. We can't do it. It's just a step backwards, and love them or hate them, perfect or not, it's the best we got right now. And we got to go with the bull in the China shop, let them go in there and wreck the place, man. We'll get there. We'll get there. It's part of the process. I've seen it going on for election after election after election, through the Ron Paul revolution and so on. It's part of the process. It's like we make ground, they show us their hand. We make ground, they show us their hand. We learn more as we go, and we teach. We got to keep teaching that and putting this kind of information out in order to keep it progressing. We can never relax. We can never allow them to take any ground back from us. And to lose the GOP would be a huge setback. It may be the worst thing that could possibly happen right now. All right, let's get through this.
It is a less alert, a less involved electorate at the national level.
You say in your book that the story of the United States is drawing to a close, and you call the U.S. a zombie empire. And especially in the light of the recent elections, when we see Republicans again enjoying their power, it really feels like a circle: Republican, Democrats, Republicans, Democrats. Where will that change come from that you talk about?
Well, it's certainly not going to come within the existing system. What we're seeing now that you just referred to, this flip-flopping, the two parties are so close together on the overall ideological framework from left to right that there's not enough differentiation. So big swaths of the population don't feel represented at all, which is why our voter turnout is among the lowest in the industrialized world.
Yeah, I disagree.
The change is not going to come from the D's and the R's, the Democrats and the Republicans, and the fact that people are constantly just voting against the party in power is a symptom of that. People are frustrated. The message they're sending is not, right now, we support the Republicans, nor was it in 2008, we support the Democrats.
It's not about the parties,
it's about the person. We hate them both, so we're voting no. The story of the United States government as the 20th century invading, bullying, imperialistic, economic and political empire, that is coming to a close. It is unhealthy for us. It's obviously terrible for the world.
He's a New York CEO.
The suspicion about elections is extrapolating from the environment in which we function, an environment in which elections are a joke, an environment in which, Sarah
they've definitely changed the definition.
Hairdresser earns more than McCain's foreign policy advisor. Why is that? Because it makes sense.
Scott Noble,
right? It's not because they're stupid. Left, it's because her hair matters more than his foreign policy proposals. Why? Because the population knows the foreign policy proposals are lies.
When we break it down and analyze,
they know there's no reason to believe what anybody says about anything like that. On the other hand, her hair is truthful.
And he's just talking about the false left-right paradigm and so on. So, I mean, we've kind of debunked that already here. For anybody who's listening on rewatch, or this is new information to them, they're coming at it from a point of view. Just say the words false left-right paradigm, and you understand they're working together. Well, you can take somebody who isn't part of that false left-right paradigm, put them in either party, and they can make a difference if they get in, right? They can start undoing this false left-right paradigm. They can start undoing the policies of the establishment, the agenda that's moving forward that gives us this cycle of abuse and the cycle of control, right? That's what we say here on the show. That's what my work is accumulated to, and this is why I'm out here every week talking about this on two different shows now, and with three different shows, man. And
in his every spare moment.
Yeah, this is what it's been all about for me, and I'm doing this for the future. I'm doing it for the kids. I'm doing it for my kid. I'm doing it for his kids. I'm doing it for their kids and your kids. That's why this is the commitment I'm making to this. I walked away from a lot of things in my life because I saw the bigger problem. I was like, what's the point of these things if this is the way it's going to turn out? What's the point of it? Right? All I'm doing is being part of the problem. Then if I have this information and I don't get out there and help people realize it, if I don't do my part. And that's what I'm trying to lead by example in that sense. And and I think everybody is here, that's rewatching this, that's made it to this point in the rewatch, because you're part of it too, and you're growing with this too. And if you can do the same thing in any way, shape, or form, you're part of solution culture, and that's what this channel is about. We have an idea here. It's a great idea. It's called Winning Reality, and we need to be winning reality together. It's about all of us doing it, right? And I can go on and on about that, but I think you guys get this crowd right here that's here right now. They get this. They've heard me say it. I'm still sick and losing steam. Great show, Shelly. Coffee in the AM. Yes. We're almost there. Thank you so much for being here, Shelly. Yes, she is.
I'll be there. See you there, honey.
Yeah. Thank you for being here and all your great input
Alaska Governor Sarah Palin joins us from her living room in Wasilla, Alaska. What'd you do to your hair? Do you like it? I tried to look like you. Okay. Yes, I'm not used to you having that many curls. It's kind of cute, but it's a surprise just to see you pop up there with the curls. Great. What's the weather like in Wasilla today? Thank you.
So the national government becomes stronger, but the participation, knowledge, and
I'm gonna skip a little bit here because we
have hair.
Does imply
conceal power.
Just some of the guys who are.
So that's the key. One or another 4 years.
This guy's pretty good.
Later. So really, polyarchy is a system of elite rule, and a system of elite rule which is a little more softcore than the type of elite rule that we would see under a military dictatorship, for instance. But what we see is that under a polyarchy, the basic socioeconomic system does not change. It does not become democratized. Wealth is not redistributed downward. You don't see a more equitable redistribution of wealth and resources. So that's the key. Socioeconomic dictatorship and free elections.
What is your loyalty to that system? Wouldn't it be better to say
deep enough within ourselves, if we focus on happiness, if we grasp that we are truly exceptional, if we find our inner strength, we can have everything we want. Reality is not an impediment to what we desire.
The American dream.
The American dream.
I've spent my whole life chasing the American dream.
I'd say they should have called that man the prophet, because he just knew. You know we can't hear that, right?
Hear what?
George Carlin?
To draw the
way you get struck.
You can't. Hold on. How can you not hear it?
There was no
the volume's
sound
up.
over the. Yeah, but they took the sound out on the George Carlin because that's an instant strike. They will take down your whole feed.
No way. Who did?
Whoever
I can hear it on
made
this
documentary.
Oh shoot. Okay, hold on. Okay, I see what's going on. Stop. Yeah, you're right. I got a warning on it, like immediately.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
That's what took down Farron's channel.
Oh, well, okay. All right. Well, hey guys, I think that we got to the end of this.
He's like, yep, now we're gonna go with the warning.
I didn't know that.
That's why I said they should call him the prophet, because everybody strikes you down if you play any Carlin at all.
Holy cow! I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Makes me want to rewatch all his old stuff.
He's not even alive.
I know, but he spoke truth. He said things that all of them came true, and now that's what they're trying to suppress.
All right. Well, we're 3 hours in anyways, man. And like I said, I think the first
is alive and well.
Yeah, that was immediate, dude. Whoa. I was impressive technology there, guys. Okay. So I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
But yet we can't keep sub counts. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. All right, guys. So
I thought you knew that. I'm sorry.
No, I didn't. But thank you guys for letting me know,
Mm-hmm. I thought you knew that's why you lowered the volume, but then I realized you thought it was playing. I was like, nope. Get them off the screen. But you see how quick and easy it was for them. That's the scary part.
Yeah.
They're not watching. They have machines watching you, and they boom within seconds. And that
was amazing. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's all laugh about that, dude. Whoop.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But could you ask for a better example of how we're being watched and monitored? And silenced?
Yeah. Okay. Streams back to excellent condition. We will not be suddenly taken off air because of me not knowing that. So
that's what I'm here for. I would have spoken up sooner if I didn't know you knew that. I thought you knew.
No. And if that ever happens again, let me know. Like, believe me, if I'm not fiddling over here, I just was trying to get past all the left leaning guys trying to pine for social democracy there at the end. That's all BS. But at the time, hey, look, I think for what it's worth, a lot of that documentary was really good, and
it was really good. Yeah.
Yeah. We got to look at everything. Like I was going to ask here at the end anyways, like I want to play some of the old Alex Jones documentaries. Like, there's the Obama dissection, there's Fall of the Republic, there's other things that we can watch that he did, we can go through and kind of analyze as well. I know maybe a lot of people haven't seen those, but I wouldn't mind going through some of those again as well, as part of the whole book of knowledge that was out there back then, right? Why does he think that, judge him by his enemies? The establishment hates him. I mean, he may be off the charts in some areas, and he may have made some big mistakes due to I think growth really, and just maybe just the lunacy of having to fight this fight. He's been fighting longer than a lot of us for sure. I mean, I'd like to throw some of this out there if people would like to watch them. Let me tell you what, while we're hanging out here for a second before we leave, I'm gonna throw a quick poll out there just to kind of get the feel of the crowd. I want to say, should we cover the old I'm gonna pay AJ Alex Jones documentaries. I'm just interested to see if the crowd's interested, and please, be honest. It's all good. I got plenty more things to show us, but I just want to know if this is something that you guys would be interested in doing, and when you would show up and be interested in watching with us. But yeah, hey, to cover some of the better points of the documentary we saw tonight, and I think we've said it a lot throughout, that there's a method to this system, and we're starting to really unveil it here as we move along. And I hope it's becoming more and more apparent to you guys, and more apparent about what the solutions are. We dive into solution culture a lot deeper on Unveiling Reality. Once I get out of the UFO rabbit hole, it's probably about 2 more episodes. By the way, speaking of which, next Wednesday, we'll be doing the Starseed Indigo Children and the Gaia Network. So we'll be wrapping up where all the alien stuff heads. Yeah, it'll be fun. I'm gonna have I got Caitlin comments, definitely has committed to coming, and I don't know if Mr. Shizzy Wisnut has responded yet, but yeah. Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard back from Shizzy, but Caitlin's a definite. So me and her at least will be there to talk about the Indigo Children and all that stuff. So that, and then after that, we gotta get to Drake, man. That's the big thing we've been promising since I started the channel about Drake, man. I won't have an interview with him, I'm sure, but we'll talk about the original Q and how he ties into the UFO alien worm rabbit hole and so on. But back to that, yeah, there is a system that we can unveil, right? And it comes down to that mind control aspect of it. Then it goes into the how the trauma-based mind control, information-based mind control, trauma-based mind control, and then how that enables the corruption to generationally continue in our system. And see, people get confused. It's like people dislike that, or they think they get so normalized to it, they don't think that there's another way that we can live. And maybe true utopia is just living in a better way, like a more honest way. It's not the that nobody has to work and there's nobody with problems, right? It's just that we have a more honest way of living, and people can trust information more, and people can grow up without being damaged more easily. You know,
that'd be great.
It's just that we minimize it to the point where there's more good than bad in the world. And I think that we've let it get out of hand with these people that have been in charge for so long, where there's more bad than good in the world, that there's still good in the world. And that's the light of hope, you know, and we find hope through the light of truth. Right. And that's always been the journey for me and for anybody else like myself, like Jacob and others that are taking this walk, they're taking this journey, and they're out here putting everything they have into it, their years, their time, to try to make a difference. And that's what we do here. It's just not, I could sit here and probably put my camera on and drink liquor all night and do just fine, and that's a lot of fun, right? Or I can just go, read what someone else wrote and just, well, there you have it, but I do more. I go deeper. I put my thoughts and my energies into trying to make a difference with everything. So, anyways, we'll let the poll run.
Sorry, I tried to hold it in.
Bless you. Yeah. So,
thank you.
I thought the first one's really great, though. The first documentary, I really loved that. It was such a concise understanding of the. Let me pull this back up while I'm here, and let's just start marking off the retro board while we got a few more minutes, and then we're gonna do our outro and we'll be out of here. But yeah, I think we've really tackled this one. I'm gonna go ahead and give that one an acknowledged here. Let me try to pull this in a little bit. You guys love to watch me fiddle with the board, right? What else did we hit? I think, did we hit this one pretty good? I mean, I didn't really get into the nuts and bolts of it. Do I need to dive deeper?
They're too small.
Oh, okay. But we did really talk about war and the horrors of war, right? So let's put this one right here. And if we didn't really deep dive on what the military industrial complex is, we can certainly say that we've covered what war is. Let's see, I'm gonna have to do this one a little different, aren't I? Let's just do like that. It's a borderline one between the two veils, right? I think that we talked a lot about, I need to say, you guys are gonna update the board with me. We did do the establishment media and mind control. I think we really got a hold of that. I'm sure it'll come up more, but oops, not that one, this one. And that one. Okay, so we've really gotten into this. There's more in Hollywood and the entertainment industry I think we can hit. Let's see, what else do we get to?
Hi, Elifant.
Hey, Elifant, how you doing?
Happy Sunday. Daisy said I wouldn't mind a drunk winning stream.
I bet. Oh man, that would be interesting.
Not wild enough sober?
Right?
Man's mouth runs away from him all the time.
Oh, I know.
In a good way.
But really, I think when I talk about institutional psychology, I'm talking about, well, we really are hitting social engineering hard right now. So that one's pretty good. Oops, how'd I keep doing that? All right, there we go.
Jacob, you're fine.
Yeah, you're all good. We could probably do more on this one. I'd like to. I guess I need to have another term for the for things like the CFR and the other things that we covered tonight. Disinformation. I think we've done that. We'll probably deep dive harder on censorship, maybe. Oh yeah, that's right. This is the other one. We gotta do like this. Other way around. Look at these borderline ones, right? We did pretty good on COINTELPRO, I thought, early on. And the Fed informants, we've definitely covered that too. So we can take these guys and hit that. Let's just put that right there. All right, I'll start squeeze these in a little bit. You guys see that all right? Sorry, I can scroll on deeper.
When I get a week where I get good sleep, I promise, guys, I will make a different kind of thing for him for this. I promise. So it's easier for him too.
I like it.
I know you like it, and it's beautiful, sweetie, but you're giving a lot of information, and I want it to be easier for you and for them. Ellie got upset. She said, I just went to, hey, wait, where's my wrench? And realized she's on your channel, not mine.
Aw.
Aw.
All right, so I think we're really hitting this one too. Oops. I think we've really hit this too. The generational control strategies. Do you think I've hit that pretty good? You let me know if I've done a good job or not on these. We still got so much more to do, and I'll be adding more to this as we go along. I'm really excited for the days where we're just really focused on this. And that's going to be like, you guys are going to be like all-star students by all-star knowledge base by then in this, and be ready to take this kind of information out yourself and really have conversations about it. If you aren't already, for anybody, rewatch, down the road watchers, anything like that. If you find this information years down the road after we've long since done it and you're getting something from it, leave me a comment. Like, tell me about it. I'll go back years from now and see what you had to say. And I'd get really excited to know that that people are out there getting this information way down the road. We still have so much more to cover in this area. Public schools, we really need to hit education hard.
Yes.
I wouldn't mind talking about the growth of this and this stuff a little bit deeper. I feel like there's more I could take off the board right now, but I'm just going to leave it at that for now.
I want to be there for the education one because there's no way I don't have an opinion for that one.
Oh, yeah. Jacob, see right there what you were talking about? Boom. Right there. It's been on the board the whole time. Yeah.
You just couldn't see it.
Yeah, it's up there. It's a main point. It's a main point. It's I see it as the same way you do. It's a serious point we have to do. We have to figure out. And maybe one day when I get it to a certain point, I can have like a printout or something you guys can download where you can actually go through the board and look at it yourself and understand it deeper instead of just kind of looking at it, me fiddle with it as we sit here. The veils of perception, right? And how we peel them back so we can understand the world around us. That needs to come in a little bit. There we go. All right, guys.
Are you going to redirect?
Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, let me thank you for reminding me of that. That's why
Jay-Z said Strategic Guys just went live.
Oh, he did? You guys want to go over there? Let me get in here and
she put the link in the thing.
I can find it in the background here. Open this over here. And
Ellie said, did you all know Camelot is getting canceled on multiple platforms by a furry pedo? Ooh.
What?
I did not know
how's that
that.
Even possible? How's that even possible?
I did not know that.
Well, and by the way,
we're gonna have to look into that because that's not right.
Jeez, I didn't even realize I didn't put this on tonight. The trolls would have had a blast. All right. Sorry about that. I know you guys are all subscribers, so we won't have any issues. But let me find out what's going on here. Strategic Guys. Yeah, it's up. We're gonna do that. What's he talking about? Baltimore PD to blame for the Brooklyn massacre. Yeah, let's hook him up, man. He's been on the show a few times.
He's a good
I still
dude.
don't know. Yeah, he is. Let's hook him up, guys. Woo, yeah, I had a week off, man. I'm back though. I needed a week off, and if you guys haven't heard the good news, I recently got back to work. So and IRL, and that's good for us.
Dance in my chair.
Good for the channel. I finally found the right thing in the right place, and it's gonna be awesome. I can't wait. So I had to work on that this week, as well as just sometimes I just need a breather. There's a lot of energy to put do 4 shows a week and to come up content and guests and so on. I will have the win this week short back soon. I will have a whole new lineup.
Sick, guys.
Yeah, I was sick too. I don't like taking time off for that, but sometimes you got to do it. Sometimes you got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think we've learned a lot here today.
Sorry, Ellie. I'll look into it.
What happened? Okay.
No, I'm just telling Ellie I'll look into the Camelot thing so I find out what
happens. Yeah. Maybe we have to rally for him. And don't forget, we've been rallying for Gary Lamb too, and what happened to the folks in Oklahoma where the state ran out of money and Section 8 people were in some peril there. And if you can do it, if you haven't already, it would be great to give him a little something, even if it's $1 or $5, man. Just knowing that you're there to support him means a lot. And we'll get there eventually.
Can we put the link in the description?
Yeah. Let me. Do you have it handy? Does anybody have it handy?
I don't know.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what.
Battling that headache. So. I'm not doing much.
That's right. You come back. Here, hold on. Let's see. You can jump on this for me.
If you could in my Discord, that'd be great, Jacob. Yeah, maps go on the wall.
They do.
They don't get to have power. We got to take that away.
Let's see. I'm still looking for it. Maybe one of the mods can jump in here real quick. Help me out.
You say that one of the mods. I'm your mod.
I got other mods.
Are they here? I can't see them on this side.
Hold on. I'm almost there, guys.
And you got to close your poll. Did everybody vote on the poll? I only see 5 votes. For shame.
Okay, here we go.
And they were unanimous. It's all yes.
Okay, good. So I'm glad you guys are interested in that. We'll do that.
That was easy.
Okay, am I back in? I'm trying to. Oh my goodness, I gotta cancel.
Oh God.
Okay, here we go. I think this is it. Boom, there it is. Okay. Thank God. Woof. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Again, full week coming up. Shelly will be back tomorrow morning with her show at what time?
8 a.m. Eastern.
8 a.m. Eastern.
Coffee and chaos. I promise one or the other or both.
Ooh, all right, guys. Thank you so much, man. It's been a great
Thanks
night.
For hanging out.
Yeah, you guys rock, man. It means so much that you're here. And you know what we say. Until next time, y'all, keep on winning.
The ones that want you about. Yes, I'm Mother Nature, all the spirit waits in life. Louder and louder, I hear the ancient horn. Faster and faster, labors all the time. Tighter and tighter, hold the lightning fast. Closer and closer, hear all your walkers so green. Hear all your walkers so green.